Hello, do not adjust your streaming screens. It is I, Crisis, and you're having a crisis. Me, live from a lovely winter's day here in New Zealand because we have just passed the winter solstice here in the southern half of the globe, and it is cold as they would say in New Zealand here. So this is my pull list show here from Crushing Crisis. I talk about all the comics out, not last week because we're still catching up, but from actually a month ago on May 14th, and I read just about 50 comics, and I have a lot of things to say about them. But as those of you who are regulars know, before we do that, we start talking about my picks of 2025, my 2025 comic series ranking. So let's go through that. Then we're going to talk about my picks of the week. Then we'll talk about some greetings and go. Let's set the clock. Only some minor shakeups this week at number 12. My favorite still, Eddie Brock Carnage, hanging on. Number 11, peeking back into the top 12 with this new issue, Green Lantern Corps. Number 4 by Jeremy Adams and his team. Also Ghost Box, which recently concluded from Comixology, written by Mike Carey. A big recommendation, free for you if you have Amazon Prime. Then we have Detective Comics by Tom Taylor, although this covers from the annual by Al Ewing, which was extraordinary. Jump Scare by Cullen Bunn and Danny Luckert, Solomon Kane, The Serpent Ring, The Tin Can Society by Peter Warren, Francesco Mobley, that's from Rick Remender's Giant Generator. Now things have changed a little bit at the top of the rankings. We have Nice House by the Sea by James Tunney and Alvaro Martinez Bueno and Jordi Belair. Then moving up a little bit is Doctor Strange of Asgard. We have a number 3 issue to talk about this week. Moving down one spot is Batman Dark Patterns by Dan Waters, Hayden Sherman, and Triona Farrell. At number, gosh, is this 2? The Avengers by Jed MacKay and his shifting art team, but still at number 1, of course. Until some issue comes out that changes my mind. It is FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick, David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Cowles. It remains my favorite comic book of 2025, but a little bit of a shakeup here, right? Avengers is now my favorite superhero comic book of the year, slightly edging Dark Patterns. Big changes, small big changes, small directional changes, big news. I don't know. So now let's look at my top picks of the week. I have this website, it's called Crushing Crisis. You could not possibly see my top picks of the week there yet, though, because I have not published the May 14th picks, but I wrote them. I wrote the posts, and they're ready to publish after this show, but I know what they are, and so we're going to look at what I thought my top pick of the week would be versus what it wound up being. So for DC, I thought my top pick of the week would be Batman Dark Patterns. Duh, we talk about it all the time, how it's my favorite comic book series, but no, in a huge, shocking, surprise twist, this week, it is Batman and Robin by Philip Kennedy Johnson. What? We're going to find out why later. For Marvel, my pick of the week was, Doctor Strange of Asgard. Like, hello, it's now one of my favorite superhero comic books. And shocking no one, especially since it went up in the power rankings, it was my favorite Marvel book this week. Image, now things get interesting. I thought maybe it would be Transformers because the Megatron origin in the prior issue was so cool and kind of like got me on board. I was probably not shocked to learn that it was Exquisite Corpses by James Tynion. I just think I was a little soft on what the concept was going to be from reading the solicit, but it's James Tynion, and we'll talk about it later. And then on the indie side, kind of a slim pickings this week. I thought my number 1 would be I Heart Skull Crusher because I'd read the first 4 issues of the series when the last issue came out, and I really enjoyed them. However, it was, surprise, Zenescope had a very good week, and I can heartily recommend Myths and Monsters Spring Edition 2025, and we'll talk about why a little bit later. So those are my top picks of the week and my power rankings of series so far. Now let's just say hi. I know a lot of people are traveling these past couple Sundays, man. Once it gets into the summer for you all, you northerners, now I kind of understand, like, your lives are a little bit different than mine. You're going to be at the beach, you've got holidays, you've got Comic Cons. I understand. So I know some people are going to be seeing this on the rewatch, but I really love that some people just dropped in just to say hi anyway. This might be the point in the stream when I have to put on my glasses. I have to read things or, oh, that's better. Okay. But, you know, it's kind of like a fun surprise. Like, I don't know what the hair and makeup looks yet. And then we go 4 whole minutes. And then I put the glasses on and I get my own makeup review of what I can't see that. Okay, let's see. Logan Wayne got in there nice and early to usurp Bunkmaster B at Bunkmaster B's number 1 commenting spot. Superdrop says Celsius, which is a Comics Pals in joke. If you don't watch the Comics Pals, they are a delightful, one of the few comic panelists slash shows that I actually endorse and have fun watching. Wow, my tongue is twisted. And I even did my warm-ups. Some suggestions for Moment of Krisis today, because I truly have no idea. As I get older, what will happen to my collection when I pass? Definitely something I think about. We will take that under advisement. Bunk has to be in a lot of the near mint condition regulars I know are at Heroes Con, although they're probably driving away from Heroes Con at this point, because it's Sunday there now, right? So, but I've been seeing raucous pictures of all my good internet friends together all weekend. Edwin Billiot saying, I can't count, but how is there still so much discussion with more than 1.5 left until the live stream starts? I think that was because I was asking for Moments of Krisis. I don't know. James Abel is going to be missing a session today because I think he is traveling away from said Heroes Con, but he is interesting in my eye thoughts on Gwenpool, probably meant Gwenpool, which I did read this week, and I do have some thoughts. Kane is saying hello and hi to everybody from Heroes Con. We have regular Ryan Bragg, who I think, if I'm not mistaken, is a new profile picture. Let's see. James has just located 2 friends of the channel in the wild, both Bunkmaster B and Josh Greathouse. If you've never read Josh Greathouse's comic Bang, it is a delightful indie comic. I hope it is something I get to read and feature on the channel at some point. Jarn Pauls is here reminding me to do my pronunciation warm-ups, which apparently only had so much effect, but I really did try. I said the jar of yarns is jarringly general 10 times, but that did not get the tongue all the way awake. Max Appelman is here. If you have not seen his new Beetle Bop, this means he's approaching, having done it every week for a whole half a year. This week it is She's Leaving Home. Stoops saying hello. A pair of names I do not recognize. Cedric and Ellen. Good evening, everyone, and greetings from Belgium. I know we had a lot of Belgium and Netherlands in the mix already. I'm wondering if they're truly new or if they had a different name before, but either way, welcome to Patrick Borgel is here. Here's the Netherlands contingent has arrived. Cool Angel went to Comicpalooza in Houston Friday and Saturday, and then back home, and a Terrifier signing this morning. Finally, time to relax. That is a comic-filled weekend. Keith just dropping by from the distant past because he's just catching up on last week's stream, which would be like 6 weeks in the past in terms of comic books. So what I'm trying to do now, and the reason I haven't put the post up on Crushing Krisis, I'm writing 2 at a time. Like I'm doing 2 weeks of Marvel, 2 weeks of DC, and 2 weeks of Image, because actually it's not the comics reading that's holding this up, although, I mean, it is a lot of reading. It's actually me writing all the posts on Crushing Krisis, because the motto is the Crushing Krisis comes first. That's where all the guides are. That's where hundreds of thousands of people on the internet find help with their comic book questions. So I always have to, if I want to have the fun on the video with the makeup, I've got to do Crushing Krisis and put the work in. So trying to find ways to make that a little bit more efficient so that it can move a little bit at a quicker clip, because if that catches up, then it'll be easier for this to catch up. And I think we said hello just about everybody. Jamie C47, excited for another stream, working on the profile pic. Lance J. McNair, it would not be a stream quite as fun if Lance was not here. A Fifth of Jack Gaming, talking about timing, chill with Krisis while having my own crisis moment. Having to put away books and clean the room. Well, that's not such a big crisis. I had some crises this weekend, so I definitely can relate, says Murph. Novarg, with my beloved little Novarg. I don't know what the character is called. I assume the character is also Novarg that he drew, that's in his profile picture. And Pitima is think now I have said hello to all the unique human beings. Wait, I'll say hello again to Super Drop, one of our most regular of regulars. A lot of fiber in Super Drops. Crisis Diet, and Michael Wesleus. Okay, well, thank you all for spending your time with me, whether that is a Sunday afternoon, or I guess it's pretty late in Sunday evening for those of you who are in Netherlands and Belgium. I suppose this is where I'm supposed to think of a moment of crisis. Oh darn, let's scroll back up and see what those suggestions were. We got a suggestion about Marvel canceling books, 10 issues of Sooner, the constant rebooting, renumbering. Okay, there might be something in that, although I feel like I've done that already. I don't know. I'm kind of attracted to what happens when we keep accumulating things and we get closer and closer to death. That might be the moment of crisis this week. But just even before moment of crisis, I was just having a crisis. I had to repeat our resolve, repair, recover mantra this weekend because you probably don't remember because I wasn't on the channel at the time. But last year I had really bad dental problems and it was so painful. And I was like, I couldn't read, I couldn't write. It took me out for a couple months until it was all resolved. And this weekend, One of them came back just for 24 hours, just like a little cameo appearance. And I definitely spent 4 hours like being super sorry for myself. Like, and it's funny, this is the exact week it happened last year. Like, do teeth know what calendars are? Or do they know what the solstice is? Maybe there's some kind of like magical thing that's happening on the solstice that awakens the demons that live inside of my teeth. This is the thing that I would probably believe if it was still the 1500s. And I gave myself literally, I think 4 hours solid of like, this is the worst. My life is going to be horrible again. I don't know if I have enough money to resolve all the things right now. And then at the end of the 4 hours, I was like, okay, that was a nice 4-hour pity party. You probably also have stuff to do. And so then I got back to the comics reading. You know what? The next day I woke up. It was not that bad. Who knows what will happen, but sometimes you just got to take that time and then make the resolve and repair and recover. And so I gave myself a little miniature version of that. Repair, recover doesn't have to be weeks. Sometimes just a couple of hours to feel sorry for yourself and then move forward. So that was a mini moment of crisis. But now let's do the official moment of crisis. And actually, I really like this one. I really like this one. So the idea, and this is submitted by longtime watcher. Uh-oh, I just lost it, but I know who it was. I just want to say your name right. Well, anyway, submitted by a longtime watcher. That this idea of it's Rapto Rancher. I just wanted to say it right and make sure I wasn't switching any words in the middle. And Rapto Rancher said, as I get older, what will happen to my collection when I pass? Because it keeps growing. I think about this, apparently I'm actually aging reverse and we've hit second puberty based on that voice crack. Okay, let's try that again. I often think about this because I think technology is always changing, including the technology of how we read comic books. And I started collecting all this stuff in 2010, and there is nothing that I bought in 2010, maybe some Masterworks in this room, because things have changed so much since then. In 2010, there were not that many X-Men omnibuses. In 2010, there were no Epic collections. There was no hope that we were ever going to see all of Avengers collected, all of Daredevil certainly not collected. It was seen as a low seller. And so, you know, depending where we put our toe in, our collection changes, right? Somebody who started collecting in the 90s has a very different collection of singles than now. And I mention that because I always say I would have told somebody to just go digital. Even if they started in like 2015 or 2016, all these omnibus Epic collections, it's all Marvel Unlimited. But you know, I'm somebody who once I get locked into something, I get locked into it. And this is just such a tiny fraction. You know I have every Epic collection. You know I have every DC Finest already. You know I have all of the X-Men oversized hardcovers through 2010. But this is just a tiny kernel of the collection. There are the stacks downstairs in the garage, which at some point we will broadcast from there. And there's so much more. There's over 144 short boxes. And I do now think every time I get a new book, and I'm trying to find like something new. Like, you know, recently we saw in one of my hauls, I got these beautiful oversized hardcovers of By the Horns, which is an indie book that used to be on Scout. Now it is truly indie. And, you know, it's different when I get something like X-Men or Spawn, because I'm like, you know what, if I reach a point that I'm tired of this book, I'm sure there is somebody who will buy it, or there's some library that will take it, because this is a known property. And so I think that all of us who are accumulating all these things, when we're buying something like Superman or Batman or X-Men or Spider-Man, in the back of our minds, we're like, okay, well, if I have to hit the eject button, if I decide I don't want all these things later, there's probably a way to find a home for this, right? People in my life, the library, Trade Me, well, that's eBay here, eBay, whatever. But when I buy something like this is so niche. It had a Kickstarter that only made a few hundred copies. I've only ever seen 2 or 3 other people talk about this book on the internet. Buying this is a commitment that I'm going to be buried with this. I mean, King's Tut style in my temple, you know, this would be buried along with me, because I don't think there's anybody else probably who wants this, which is not a knock on it. I love the series. It's just not as well known. And when you're me and you have this totally voracious appetite for books, I often have to ask myself that question when I'm buying things that are not X-Men or not Batman. I'm like, is there any way to get rid of this? Or more to the point, this has intrinsic value to me, but does this actually have market value? Because a lot of times with our omnibuses or even our Epic collections, we are on some level, even if we are not a big buy-sell trade person, we are aware that they have market value and that they could be like moved. But you know, when you have a really kind of rare or small time book, and I see so many on this shelf here, it's kind of like, does this have a market value beyond the intrinsic value that it has for me? I think for a lot of people in this pastime, I think you're buying a lot of things that have market value, and you always know that there's a escape button, whether it's when you move houses and don't have the room, or you're getting older and you don't think you're going to read them all again. You know that you can just put a big lot of them up or donate them or whatever, and they'll go away, but you never want to think about having to throw away books. having moved countries, I definitely am aware of the like, what if this thing has to go sort of sensation. Because packing up the house in the States, there were some things that I dearly loved, some things that had a lot of intrinsic value to me that just could not come with me. Not just books, because books were actually pretty easy, but like my armchair that I loved and it had been my grandmother's armchair that she got in like 1999. It was this beautiful, huge leather armchair that I inherited from her. You could sit, you could curl up your whole body in it, read. I sat in it every single day, and it just was going to take up so much room, and I couldn't figure out if it was even going to fit because houses in New Zealand are smaller, and I didn't bring that. And that had intrinsic value to me that I can never get back. Even if they ever made that exact armchair here in New Zealand, which they didn't, I can never have that again. So I think that's a form of FOMO that we don't often fully articulate in our collection. It's the FOMO not of missing buying something, but having something that means something to us that if we let it go, we can't get it back exactly the same. And the Epic collection, we can get it back exactly the same. Somebody's got it for sale somewhere. It could be another printing, but that first printing probably doesn't have that kind of meaning to you. But certainly there's some things in your collection you're like, especially with singles, especially with like single issues that you have a memory that you got it at that shop or that convention. Even if you sell it and replace it with a collection, it's like, is it ever going to be that thing that had intrinsic meaning to you again? So I think that's why you hear me so often say now that I buy all epics because they're here for research purposes. I would love a whole Marvel library up to 2004 that I could just open a book and check an appearance for my website. That is a very specific use for me. But apart from epic collections, you really hear me often say, I only want to bring something physically into the collection if I'm sure I'm going to reread it at least 3 times. Because I feel like, you know what, if I reread this book 3 times by the time I need to be sent away to my mummification, then I got my money's worth out of it. And if it has to get thrown in the trash because nobody else on earth knows what it is at that point when I've lived to 21, 23, that's fine because I've got my enjoyment out of it. And when I look at stuff that I really might not read 3 times, I'm like, do you really need that? Could you just read that digital? So if I have any advice to all of you, because I know my collection is significantly larger than many of your collections, I would say form some kind of line now. Accumulating with no end in sight is just accumulation. Even if everything you accumulate makes you very, very happy on the day you accumulate it, at some point you're going to be 31, 41, 51, 61, 71, and you're going to be like, wow, I now have responsibility for all of these possessions, and nothing makes that more crystal clear than moving countries, let me tell you. So I think I think ultimately you can't be worried about the physical things that you have on Earth and what's going to happen to them when you get old and wither. You have to worry about the people and the good in the world that you left behind. And so ultimately, I kind of tell myself, well, if some of these epic collections get thrown in the trash because my family doesn't know what to do with them one day when I pass away, hopefully I've helped hundreds or even thousands of people find the comic books that they really love by using these to research Crushing Crisis. But if you don't have that kind of motivation, I would say draw a line somewhere. Draw a line. I want to have to reread this a certain number of times. I'm only going to buy things of my favorite character. Because honestly, ultimately, the thing that matters is the happiness that you get from the book and the happiness you can create with that book. Does it let you talk about comics with your best friends? Does it let you read comics with your kids? Do you loan it out to your cousin who always wanted to get into comics after watching the Marvel movies? That's the stuff that really matters. Because you know what? If we didn't want to have any physical things, we would just save this money and put it in a savings account or the stock market. But we're spending it on books. So there's no perfect answer because we're spending it on books. And they're books, and why are we exchanging money for books all the time? Oh my gosh, I could have a fierce savings account with the interest that I've spent on all these books. But hopefully it's creating happiness for you and happiness in the world. And hopefully you've kind of decided what's your line. So you're not just buying things that you don't really care if you have them. Because that's the thing I think we need to avoid. You know what? If we have a collection and we care about it, every book in it so much, then it was worth having. And we can't worry about what happens when we're not here to have it anymore. Gosh, that ended kind of grim. But anyway, Moment of Krisis, extemporaneous, just proving that I truly never know what I'm talking about. Because it doesn't matter if it's something that I think I already planned or something that one of you brought up. We just don't know what I'm talking about ever. Okay, it's really kind of like ADHD theater, the Moment of Krisis. Sometimes I have a little bit more of an outline, sometimes I don't. So I'm going to put up the Ask Me Anything. We always say that we're going to move on to the comics by 25 minutes into the stream, but let's actually try that this week. So let's see what everybody said, and it looks like not too many comments. Oh, this is probably where I have to put my glasses back. I'm sorry, I'm just really admiring the blending today. I know you're not here for a makeup stream, and maybe one day I'll be good enough that I can spin off a whole separate makeup channel, and then I could could be a makeup influencer in addition to being a comic influencer, and then they could send me free makeup, because let me tell you, in terms of things that are costing me money right now, makeup really is neck and neck with comics at points. But you're not here for that. Okay, so let's see what people have said, and if you have any questions, and then we will move on. Lance McNair saw Life of Chuck. I don't know what that is, and honestly loved it. It lifted my spirits in these trying times with everything going on in the world. Well, maybe you can follow up and tell me what that is. Also, I probably should change my profile pic since this is nearly 10 years old. You mean you're not that fresh baby-faced same Lance anymore? Possibly not. Okay, let's see. TaylorMade is here. Novarg. So Novarg is the human being typing the words. The character is named L, but a pleasure to be here. Okay, I have to remember that. I always need my mnemonics to help me remember things. I don't know how I'm going to remember he's L. It's kind of like Kal-El, but just the back half of that. And he's red and yellow like Superman, but he doesn't have the blue like Superman. So maybe he's like half of Superman's name, L. We'll see if that sticks next week. This is how I remember everything. This is how when you ask me what issue is that, I'm like, Uncanny X-Men 268. These are the calculations that goes on in my head. Jamie C47 reads digitally and then only buys omnis of my favorite runs. Too expensive a hobby to blind buy for me. I completely agree with that. I joined the Reddit omnibus collectors community during the poll season because they're a bunch of really cool people, and I wanted to like actually give them some insight and let them participate in the poll, you know, if they're not on the Near Mint Discord. And often you'll see a post that's like, I want to buy an omnibus. Which of these two should I buy? And you'll say like, which do you like? And they're like, I've never read either of them. I'm like, oh, sweet. Oh, honey. Baby, you can get a full year's of subscription to either Marvel or DC for the price of one omnibus. So please skip that omnibus that you have never read before and just subscribe and read one of those things digitally first, rather than just blindly buying an omnibus that you may or may not like. Edwin Billiot saying, let's not talk about what to do with our collection as we age or pass. I'm in my early 60s with no children. I don't know what to do with my 75K floppy collection. Well, Edwin is somebody who has a bigger collection than me. He is winning. I mean, and you know what the thing that people don't think about is, or at least I don't enough, is you're the custodian of that. Like, what, do you have them so well organized that if you want to find one issue, you know just where it is? Because I kind of do, but not to the extent that I would like. And if I wanted to spend time on that, it would take hours and hours and hours. And I think that people, I wish I'd said this during the Moment of Krisis. As somebody who has a lot of physical things and a lot of pastimes, I think people don't think about all that it takes to be the custodian of these things after you get them and they make you happy. I mean, this week I reorganized my closet because I wanted to have all of my lovely shirts in RGB of order. It took 3 hours because I was putting things on different hangers. I moved my blazers into different rooms. I don't wear blazers as much in the show anymore. And it was like, that was 3 hours of my life. And it's because I have, it turns out, like 100 dress shirts because I never throw anything away other than that armchair, sadly. So I have dress shirts that I bought for my first job in college, like when I was 20. I still have them. They still fit. So like, and it just made me be like, oh my gosh, you know, it's lovely that I have this selection of shirts, but A, am I ever wearing 100 of these shirts in a given year? I might need to make a new spreadsheet for that. But then B, like, I'm the custodian. Anytime I want to organize these shirts or change out the hangers or change the RGB of order, like, I have to put in the time for that. And I think people forget about that when they're so excited to have lots of books, or like, I have lots of guitars. I do like having lots of guitars. They're very useful. I get to play all different things and all different tunings. But then when they break strings, I've got to change the strings. When they need to be dusted and polished, I've got to dust and polish them. When they need a new setup at the Guitar Tech, I've got to take them and pay for that. And it's like, I do think that when you're in your 20s and 30s and you're in that phase of life where you're maybe hopefully starting to have a little bit of spare cash and you can start buying whatever you like, video games, blazers, guitars, you know, tools, whatever your thing is, you kind of are just so excited to have them. And then I think when you're in your like 40s, 50s, 60s, you start thinking about like, oh, like I'm the librarian of this thing now. So I don't know, Edwin, I think about that a lot. And so I would say that you probably think about that a lot too. And we could have a whole conversation about your 75K collection. Kane is one of those other 3 people on Earth who know about By the Horns. I had to explain that to my life. She thought my Magic the Gathering collection was being where the money's at. Nope, it's my omnibus collection. Yeah, Magic the Gathering. I played Magic when it was coming out of Unlimited and into 3rd edition, and I played until Ice Age in 4th edition. And those cards, I mean, I probably have like 2 or 3 cards that maybe because they still work in Commander or something, they're worth like $10. But you know, it's not like I was playing Alpha or Beta or had like Black Lotus or anything. And it's just so funny because I've actually, people have seen them or I've talked about it and they're like, whoa, I bet that's worth a lot of money. I'm like, no, I probably have one Uncanny X-Men comic book down in the stacks that's worth more than all of the Magic cards combined. and up to 2004. What happens after? Oh, for my Marvel collection. I bought pretty much all of Marvel in trades from 2004 forward. 2004 is the beginning of the trade era. There's a few series that started in 2003 that didn't get trades as it continued into 2004. New Mutants 2003 never had original trades. They eventually did a complete collection of it. Silver Surfer had a series in that era that only the first half of it got collected and never the back half. But generally anything from 2004 and forward is in trade, which means two things. One, anything Marvel's put in trade since 2004, unless it's mature readers, is on Marvel Unlimited, so it's available, it's digital, you know that it exists. And B, I bought all those trades. When I was starting putting Crush and Krisis together, I really think I have every Marvel trade from 2004 to 2015. I truly have every one. So I only need Epic collections up to that point. As I think I've talked about in the past, I will do a modern Epic if it just improves things. Like I love this Black Widow Epic line because it was collected in so many different trade paperbacks. Some of them overlapped other ones. There were single little 3-issue ones. I think one of the things I did have to get in single issues. So this is perfect because it just gets that all into a paperback, and I'll find those at some point in the stacks and like donate them or sell them. But more in general, most things from 2004 forward that was like a series, like Uncanny X-Men, they're just perfect sequential trades that have everything in them. So I'm not going to upgrade to an Epic collection of something that I already have perfectly in trades, because Epic collections often don't really offer any improvement or any extra material or anything like that. And we've seen that, right? We've seen that with like the new X-Men Epic collections. They're just exactly what the complete or ultimate collections were, which I have. So I do not buy those. Kane's saying there are things that have so much sentimental value to me that I do want them to be buried with me. Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, now we're getting into like deep stuff, and I know the time has reached the time that is timing. I really want to just be like buried in a field beneath some trees. Like the whole funeral, I mean, no harm meant if any of you are in like the mortuary business, but that is a racket, man, a racket. Like a $5,000 wooden box to get put in the ground that has like metal on it. Why? Why would we bury that? Why would you bury anybody in anything that is not biodegradable? I mean, you could make a fierce biodegradable coffin with little flourishes and biodegradable paints and stuff. That would be cool, as long as you still bury me under a tree. So yeah, I joke about wanting to be buried with all my comics and things, and I think that it could be cool to be buried with like one meaningful thing. But you're gone at that point. Only if the people at the funeral think that's cool to see you buried with that. But yeah, I want to be buried with stuff that's all going to get reclaimed by the earth. I don't want to wear any jewelry or have a coffin with metal fit. That's crazy talk. It's crazy. But anyway, no harm meant. I'm not trying to attack your living if any of you are in the funeral business. Says Murph, this is a timely discussion for me as I'm targeting retiring in 7 to 10 years, and I know I want to travel more, and when I do, I have to start limiting what I buy and curate the rest. Yeah, if I was smart, the curation would be starting now. And I think that's another thing to think about. It's not even about thinking about death. It's thinking about like moving. Like what happens when you retire and you want to be like a snowbird and have a place that you go, or many places you go every winter or every summer or whatever. And like all of that physical stuff just becomes an anchor for you, right? So, I mean, we could have a whole stream for estate planning. Always an Skater, did I see the final episode of Sandman is going to be an adaptation of Death's High Cost of Living? Wow. No, I didn't. I like Sandman, not as much as some people, as it turns out. I really thought I was going to like it more. But anyway, the point being that I could not watch the show because it has that fisheye lens on everything, so everybody's face is stretched out, and it made me check my TV settings like 100 times to think that I had it on some kind of like wrong ratio. And then I watched it on my laptop and it still looked wrong, and my brain could not stop saying to me, this looks wrong, this looks wrong, this looks wrong. So I ultimately did not watch Sandman. I watched it at like 10 times speed just to see all the sets and see all the wonderful people that were in it. I love, what is their name? Mason Park? No, that's not it. But Alexander, anyway, who plays Desire. I really enjoy them and other things. But I literally watched it 10 times speed because my eyes could not take it. Space Monkey, hello from Sweden. I know we're 4 minutes over the thing, but I've never seen Space Monkey's profile picture before, and we try to greet everyone here. I totally agree about having lines for your collection. Last year, come to terms that my cutoff point for X-Men is Second Coming, not buying anything X-Men after that. I'm the same way, looking at X-Men omnibuses, that 2010 period. I don't want omnibuses after that. Maybe for Gillen, maybe. But like, somebody in New Zealand was selling at a pretty good price the Jason Aaron Wolverine and the X-Men omnibus. A, I already have it in trades. B, I don't even like that run. But C, I was like, I just don't need anything that new in Omnibus. I don't. It's lovely. I have nothing against people who wanted an Omnibus, but for me, that was as far as I need to go. So I think that is a very, very healthy choice. Very, very healthy behavior. All right, we're doing one more and then we're going to start. Two more, because I see another AMA. Okay, favorite 5 Zenoscope characters. Van Helsing is amazing. She's their best character. I do really enjoy Robin Hood. Did they have one that was like Del Muerte? I don't always remember the names, but she had like a Day of the Dead skull thing, or maybe Mystere, I think maybe her name was. And she had like kind of like voodoo undead talk to the dead powers. They did a lot of comic books with her in like 2019, and then she disappeared, but I really, really liked her. I really like this new universe they have that's not the same as the existing Zenoscope universe, and we're going to talk about it today, but one of those characters we're going to see today is a character that I really, really enjoy. And then, number 5. Oh, I love Belle. She's Batwoman. I mean, she's Batwoman that fights monsters. Just her design is very Batwoman. Her character is very Batwoman. She's like the hero of Philadelphia. I think Belle is another one of the comics that usually is one of Zenoscope's best comics. And so I really, really enjoy Belle. Okay, I said one more, but I just want to say hi to Kirill Steinbach because I have not had a chance to say hello. Okay, this is it. Everything else we will go back to later. AMA, if like Lars, I were to be immortalized in a comic. So I learned this past week that Lars is immortalized in an issue of Lobo. I think it was either Lobo 61 or 62, and they actually refer to him in the comic as the Norwegian assassin. So it was clearly somebody who kind of knew him and knew him from Wizard. What comic would it be? What would I be doing? What would be my creators of choice? Well, I would want to be drawn by Greg Land, obviously. If Greg Land was not available, I would accept Nicola Scott or Marco Cacchetto. Those are the only 3 people who are approved to draw my hair. Maybe Fried Karami. I'm a really big Fried Karami fan this year. But the hair is the most important part of the likeness. What would I be doing? I think I would be at like a mutant rights protest, and I would get killed by like the Friends of Humanity or like one of those flat scan groups, and they'd be like, "What, were they a mutant? No, it's just a human," and that would just be it. Then my dead body would be carried off panel, and it would of course be written by Kieran Gillen. Okay. Wow. And Lance said, The Life of Chuck is a Stephen King story, supernatural, not horror, based around how different people are responding to the end of the world. That doesn't sound cheerful, but it was. I do like End of the World series. Whole other story for another time. That my band was really into End of the World stuff, and the song that used to play in the end credits of shows was called Apocalyptic Love Song. It was written by my best friend and my co-writer, Gina, and it was about reactions to the end of the world and what it would be like to see all those end of the world things happening, which now doesn't really seem so fictional at the moment, this particular weekend, but that's a topic for another stream. Okay, let's get sharing. This is still a relatively early start, honestly. And let's talk about the comics from May 14th. Okay. So, hey, there it is. Okay, so this is actually catch up from, I think, still 2 weeks ago. By the way, I will still see your comments. If you comment on something that's like the book that we're talking about, I will bring it up on the screen and we'll talk about it. If you're asking a more general question or like an AMA or something deep and thoughtful, I'm going to be taking a break after the eyes, so I will get into that. Or if you just say like a general hello type thing, if it's not about the comic, I'm probably not going to talk about it. But then at the eyes, we'll take a break and then we'll see them again at the end, although this is just friggin' hilarious. Maybe Rob Liefeld to draw me, since we can never see my feet on the stream. I have so many nice shoes. I think the other thing is I have so many things that I like to collect and that I enjoy that sometimes sometimes one thing recedes and another thing grows. Like, I'm not buying guitars anymore, and I'm sure that's why I've gotten so crazy about the shirts. And the other thing is that I used to really buy shoes because I loved having cool shoes at work. But I work remotely now, and I do this stream online, and you never get to see my feet. I have this closet. I should just start putting them on the shelf behind me. I have so many cool shoes. Just cool, like, colors, dress shoes with spikes on them. And I honestly, when I see a sale on the page of this one store I really like here, Mayer, that does all these, they're, like, made in Brazil, and they're beautiful. It pains me physically, because I know how bad I want them, and I'm like, oh, they're on sale! But I don't have any reason to leave the house other than in running shoes. Like, who's gonna see me in my crazy shoes with spikes? Am I gonna wear them to the grocery store? Why? So no, I don't want Rob Liefeld. I want my beautiful shoes to make an appearance in the comic book. Okay. So a couple of weeks ago, there were all of these comics that were on the list. They were indie one-shot comics from the Nibs Comic Book Fest. And I started reaching out to creators to be like, hey, is there a way I can read this book? And this creator let me know they'd put up their book, Cold Moon Rising, on, I forget where it was, but you can find them online. Their name is right there, Saleha Chowdhury. They're on Blue Sky. And this is Cold Moon Rising. Their website is theirname.com, salehachowdhury.com. This was kind of just, it was very interesting. It was kind of like a tone poem almost, in that it was just a concept of a story, and we got some of the broad strokes, but we didn't really get a lot of like the motivations behind it. But it was so interesting. This man, for some reason, has the skin of a selkie. A selkie is a sea lion, a were sea lion, right? They're like a person and they're a sea lion. And I don't know how you get a skin. I guess maybe they take off their selkie skin in the mythology, and that's how they walk on land. And he's got this kid's skin and he won't give it back, and the parents are like, we have to migrate into the sea, we'll give you gifts, but soon we're about to recede into the sea, and if you don't give our son his skin back, he's not going to be able to be with his people. I thought it was so cool. The illustration was absolutely brilliant, but it was a full comic book. It was 23 pages, but it was just like an idea, and the idea made me think so much. It made me so into this world, and I really want to see like a 60-page version of this or a 100-page version of this, like a whole graphic novel. And I absolutely would tune in for a whole graphic novel by Saleha Chowdhury, because the illustration in this was absolutely beautiful, and it made me like feel things with a very scant amount of information. It made me feel things for the person who took the selkie skin, like, why did you take the selkie skin? It made me feel things for this idea that this person had lost a part of themselves and couldn't be with their family, and their family was going to have to leave, and they had no power to go with them. Like, really interesting ideas to execute in a comic that was a really kind of more of a vibes comic and less of a story comic. I don't read 2000 AD anymore, as we know, but I did read Absolute Batman. Now, this was the second of a two-part crossover. This issue number 8, not crossover, just storyline, written by Scott Snyder with art by Marcos Martin, who's filling in here with colors from Musta Vincente and letters by Clayton Cowles. This was a two-part confrontation with Mr. Freeze, and the Mr. Freeze in this Absolute universe is quite monstrous and scary. I love Marcos Martin's art, but I did not really appreciate how it was executed in this issue. The fight with Mr. Freeze was entirely intercut with this fight of Bruce having a conversation with his group of friends that have finally learned that he's Batman, and they're all shown in silhouette, which I think is a strong take for like a page or two. But to continue cutting back to the silhouette, we're meant to know who Bruce is because he's got a cast on one arm and we can see the outline of it, and we're meant to know who the other person is because we've seen them. So it's not so much that I don't know who they are, but it just, there's nothing to connect with. Like, and I don't think Scott Snyder's script was strong enough to help me connect on that level. And then the fight was actually really well illustrated with Mr. Freeze. It was very cool. It was very kinetic. But basically these two fights keep intercutting, and then we get to the end of the issue and it was over. And I was like, wow, last issue felt really substantial. I felt like I got to spend time with Bruce. This was an all action issue, and I appreciate an all action issue, but to have Marcos Martin with you to illustrate and to just have this kind of very basic, very light on script action issue, I don't really understand kind of what the point was. Absolute Batman, the Freeze story didn't really click for me, says Cruel Angel. I hope they do better with Bane. Next, we have Action Comics, Superman Action Comics. This is the second part of a two-part story that was the last of the Superstars stories, which are major comic creators dropping in for brief Superman arcs. This one's by G. Willow Wilson with art from Gavin Goydry, colors from Trish Mulville, and letters from Dave Sharp. I actually wound up really liking this. It was a little softer on the first issue, 1085. This one, 1086, I liked. It's Superman versus Kilgore, but what was really interesting about it is Kilgore's whole position in this is basically like, the world is going to hell anyway. Like, Superman, you're only one person. You can't do anything to fix this. So like, you can't change climate change. You can't change everything about the world. You're only one person. All of your frozen breath, all of your heat vision, you just can't fix everything. And I thought that was great, because I think so often we go into this mode where we're like, in this superhero universe, everything would be great. No, nothing would be wrong. Everything would be peaceful. There would be no war. There would be no climate change. But that's not real. Just Superman in the world, in this world right now, if Superman arrived, he could not fix all of that. right? There would still be problems. He would only be one person. No matter how much advocacy he did, no matter how many actual icebergs he breathed the breath of cold back onto, it couldn't be fixed. And I just really enjoyed that perspective because we all knew he was going to win this fight. And a two-issue, kind of continuity light story, yeah, of course he was going to win the fight with Kilgore. The interesting thing was his realization that he can't fix everything. I love that G. Willow Wilson is kind of turning into like our chief environmentalist writer. Like her Poison Ivy is so much about the effect of humanity on the earth, and I love that she just made me feel that way in these 2 issues of Superman 2. And also this was funny, so I wound up really liking it. I loved this page because Superman's cold. Look at his red little nose. Superman gets cold just like the rest of us. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. And I think it might have been my favorite of all the Superstars arcs. A lot of them were just flops to me. I just don't think that anybody had a really great plan for what to do with Superman for 2 issues. So they just turned in these very average stories. And then Mark Waid came back for his weekly series in the middle of it, Phantoms, and just dunked on all of them. This is the only one to me that I think I would reread that kind of like stood up for me. Lance says, I think James Gunn's Superman film will hopefully tackle well how rough Superman would have it in the real world today. And I also just have to say, White Wolf Library is here watching live for the first time. Very cool. As they feed their newborn and get ready for work. Also very cool. I used to wake up at 5 o'clock every day, which I'd never done in my entire life, to feed Kid Crisis and get to spend time with Kid Crisis when she was a little baby before I went to work. And so I started being the person that opened the office. I had to get keys to my office because I got there first. And to this day, I'm an early riser now because I spent that whole first 2 years of her life waking up early just to make sure I would see her before work, and I wasn't like only seeing her for the first time at like 6 o'clock at night. So that really stuck with me. So you, congratulations to you, and really enjoy these times. Take pictures and video because they will change your habits for life. That's my soft and sappy proclamation. Next is Aquaman number 5. This is by, oh gosh, this is small, Jeremy Adams, John Timms, Jefferson, somebody's name is too small, and Rex Locus. Jefferson Sedzinski. So I've been having trouble with this Aquaman series because he just doesn't feel very specific to me. Like it's kind of like, okay, so he's Aquaman and he's in this other world, and like he just has this very vague I'm a rebel feeling to him, and I don't really, it doesn't feel specific to Aquaman to me. Like, what is Aquaman's personality? In 20 seconds, explain to me what is Aquaman's personality. He's not easy to define like Namor, or easy to define like the Flash or Superman. He's kind of a little bit of a cipher at this point in comics, other than like, I'm the king, I love Mera. And so this issue, the colors from Rex Locus were so cool. The lettering from Dave Sharp, very clear. It was very fun to read, but it was just another rebellion story of him briefly getting caught, being briefly in chains, breaking out of them, and getting one more person in his rebel band. This has had Aquaman's more in chains than Wonder Woman in a Golden Age comic in chains. I guess that, and it's interesting because like Jeremy Adams is writing a fundamentally decent story, but after 5 issues, I still just don't understand why this is Aquaman. It's kind of how I felt about Power Girl. It feels like this could be any hero. This could be anybody. It could be Supergirl. It could be Metamorpho. There's nothing specific to Aquaman other than it's under the sea. So I just am struggling with it. Now we come to Marvel's in continuity digital comics. The first one is, of course, Astonishing Avengers. This is by Steve Orlando, Francesco Archidiacono, colors by Carlos Lopez, letters by Travis Lanham. This felt like a little bit of waste of time to me. And I get it that all of these issues are just a little fraction of another issue, but it's basically just Somnus and the villain yelling at each other, and then Somnus and Hercules just fall a lot. The thing is, in these Infinite Scroll comics, I'm just looking for them to do one of 2 things. I want them to either make good use of the Infinite Scroll, or I want to see one character have agency, hopefully, that I wouldn't get to see in a regular print series. I don't really think either of those things happen. Somnus catches them while they fall. That's the one thing that had agency here. But I also just don't think that they used the vertical scroll very well. And I have come around on this artist, Francesco Archidiacono, and their approach to this comic. But this issue just didn't have a whole lot to me. And I just think I think there's two directions you can go with these digital issues. One is that you can just write what we would normally write in a full issue and let it get carved up into parts and see the parts one at a time. But then there's like no rising and falling action in your issue, although this one clearly had falling action. I just wish that Orlando was structuring them a little bit so that there was more of a standout moment in every issue. Because, well, I can't even talk about this for a minute, I don't think. He looks like a goddamn ferret. What is with this art from Julian Shaw? I hate this so much. If it wasn't for free and only took 125 seconds to read, I don't know if I could keep reading it because it is truly possibly the worst Spider-Man book I have read in my entire life. That's all I can say about it. Okay, so now we're to Astonishing X-Men. Again, this is currently, whenever Tim Seeley is writing this Astonishing X-Men Infinite comic, this is issue number 21, when Tim Seeley is writing it, it is my favorite X-Men comic book. It's art by Eduardo Arduino, who I've really come around on, KJ Diaz, colors, VC's, Clayton Cowles, lettering. I just love this, not just because it's Gen X, but because Tim Seeley understands characters. Even if these are not the versions of these characters that you know and love, and even if you have some quibbles with like, oh, they're not talking exactly how I want them to talk, he's made some decisions about them. And the decisions are not totally at odds with their characters. So like Husk is kind of like, apparently she's really gotten into the internet and influencers and things. And so they're at this influencer convention and she like knows who they all are. Banshee, he's leaning into Banshee as like a former investigator, as somebody who feels like he should be able to track something down. Skin, he's really leaning into the idea that like Skin didn't want to come back and do this superhero stuff, but here he is in his costume anyway. And then in this issue, they add Mondo to the mix. It's just genuinely funny. It's really well drawn. And Tim Seeley makes it feel like each one of these installments, even though clearly they would all add up together to make a single comic book across 4 or 6 of these issues, it felt complete to me. Like I felt like I got a chapter of a story. Things happened. People had agency. We made good use of vertical scroll. Like this to me is the gold standard of these shorter ones of what you can achieve. Now we come to one that is actually, and I can't say this enough times. I know that many of you have now heard me say this what month? This is the 19th, 18th release week of the year. That you've heard me say this many times. Avengers Academy by Anthony Oliveira and here drawn by Carola Borelli, colored by Ruth Redman, and lettered by Ariana Maher. This is a full-length comic book every single week on Marvel Unlimited. It's a full-length series. It's a regular full-length comic book every week with this huge cast of kids, and this issue was so great. It builds on stuff that came before, so I don't think you could start here, but basically the kids have tangled with some Hydra cells in the past, and here, now that this is explicitly part of One World Under Doom, which I also love, that it's like flirting with actual Marvel continuity in real time, Hydra in the States feels empowered. Like, Doom has other things to worry about. We're small ball. We can like take out some of the people that were protesting against us and causing us trouble in the past, so Hydra starts to just create a little fiefdom in the States, hoping that they'll be beneath Doom's notice. And so the kids arrive to take care of that. Great use of vertical scroll after like 6 or 8 weeks of them all being apart. I loved seeing them back together. This is most of the cast. Blackheart, yes, that Blackheart, like from Ann Nocenti's Daredevil, but as a fuckboy. Bloodline, Captain America, Escapade from the end of New Mutants in Krakoa era, Kid Juggernaut. I just love this cast, and they kind of pull a train job, and I'm kind of over train jobs in books generally because I just feel like we've seen so many recently that I kind of roll my eyes, but this is so motivated by who they are and the specific grudge they have against these Hydra people or that they've messed with, that it just was pure delight. I cannot recommend the series enough. And this is something where Marvel, there's a very clear line for Marvel to know if this is successful. It is how many people are looking at it on Marvel Unlimited. So please, if you have Marvel Unlimited, please, please, please go and read it. Since we're talking about this series and it's very queer, I will accept a makeup comment from CC, who I don't think I've ever said hi to before, saying my lip product is on point. You know, I discovered this last week doing the, I think the Omnidog stream. I used a really brown maroon lip liner on the bottom, and I loved the ombre that it gave, but then I did it on the top and it kind of made it look like I had a mustache. So today I did it only on the bottom and I didn't do it on the top. And I think it really looks cool. So I'm so happy you noticed because I took specific pride. I was dancing around in the hair and makeup chair, admiring that. And you know, like I said, maybe I could be a makeup influencer and a comic book influencer. Wouldn't that be cool? I'd probably have to get better at makeup. This Batman and Robin, you know that I do not usually vibe with Philip Kennedy Johnson, and this was my favorite DC book of the week. Art by Javier Fernandez and Carmine Giandomenico, and also colors by Marcelo Mayo, and letters by Steve Wands. Here's why this worked for me. Damian wasn't in it. I don't think Philip K. Johnson understands what to do with Damian. He's writing an amazing, amazing, best ever detective story without Damian. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be 10 issues long, and I do think it's kind of creeping up, but it's still a really good story, and I'm like totally hanging in there with it. These flashback pages by Gian Domenico are so good. I just love how they're drawn. I love how sparse he is with lines on faces, which often he is not, and I just like really get pulled into this story of Bruce and his youth in London. But then I also have to give a lot of credit to letterer Steve Wands. I am very, very picky about when comics express any kind of music on panel, and I think they often get it wrong. They put things on, not that I'm playing everything that's on panel, but I just think that even the depictions of it look wrong, and it kind of takes me out. I love what he did here, which is basically just play with one line on the staff and playing with notes above and below the line. And actually, as the comic book presses on and Batman and this investigator woman are having a discussion in the rafters of this opera where they think some Lautrec is her name, where the crime might be happening, the lettering of the music just gets more and more intense as it goes until it literally builds to a crescendo with more notes on the page, more things happening. The page gets more crowded. He brings red and white, so the letters kind of are like, or the musical note lettering is kind of like shadowing itself. Like, it really had an effect on me, even though the didn't say cue up this song here. And by the way, they were doing an opera production of Aida, which you could have queued up. It just like really brought me through it. I loved the mystery here. We actually got some solutions to what's been going on, which is great. Now they're in like, I don't know, issue 7 or 8 of this. I just really enjoyed it. The art team killed it. And again, I'm always in it for Batman as an investigator and Batman making some mistakes. And he did not bat a perfect game here as Batman. He did make some mistakes. Some people almost died, but he pulled it out in the end. That's the Batman I want to read. Philip K. Johnson, maybe just stop writing Damian. I know you're not going to because you're addicted to family stories and like sexual abuse in your comics, but maybe if you just stopped writing Damian, maybe you should just write Batman, because I think his Damian is totally, totally wrong. Great job. It goes to show, even a writer who I'm not as into, I will keep reading the series and I will find the good in it. Next, of course, is Batman Dark Patterns by Dan Waters, Hayden Sherman, Fiona Triona Farrell, and Frank Sedovic. It's not that I disliked this issue, this final part of the 3-part Voice of the Tower. It still had the great page layouts. It still had the great colors. But when I think back to the final issue of the first go-round of the first 3-issue arc, the final issue kind of felt revelatory. Like, it felt like there was a reward for sticking with it. It felt like it revealed something. This one kind of just felt like it monologued, and Batman like walks into this room and he just knows everything. And I don't like when Batman does that. He's like, I can tell this room was decorated by a man, not a woman. No, you can't. And then he was like, and this is what I know. Batman basically like just intuits the whole story. And I know that he's picked up clues from other things that he's been through in this tower in the past 2 issues, but it just really fell flat for me because it didn't feel like we figured anything out based on the plot that had been ongoing. There was no twist. It didn't really feel like there was a detective mystery to be unfurled. It kind of just feels like it ended. So it was still gorgeous. It was still well written. The panel layouts, just Hayden Sherman, nobody's doing it like them right now. But as a resolution to this story, it just actually made me like the whole story a little bit less because I just didn't feel like it got all the way to an interesting place. Cruel Angel says, a dead cop, a detached tongue, a building possessed, then burned down, all because Wesker tried to do a good deed, such as life in Gotham City, bring on the next case. Sounds like Cruel Angel makes it sound a lot better than I thought it was. So I'm not saying it was terrible. It just didn't like capture my attention fully the way the first one did. By the way, I see Next Imaginaut in the comments there. Hello to you, sir. I stopped reading Behemoth pretty early. It's a kaiju story about people in New York. A giant kaiju arrives and they get swallowed and then they're inside the kaiju. Just was not super my thing. Betty and Veronica, Friends Forever, Spy Girls. Who at this point is buying the Archie comics? Like, I remember when I was a youth, they would be at the checkouts in the grocery store, because now I just wonder, is it all people who are probably age 40 and up who like are like, ooh, a new Betty and Veronica comic? Or are they still in grocery stores? Would a kid buy them? It probably should be like, we're from Fortnite or something on the front. I don't understand. I mean, bless them, featuring an all-new lead story introducing the malicious Medusa Doom. And I'm not saying they're bad. I would take time to read them, but I'm like, who is their market? I was talking to somebody recently about, and it may have been about the Masterworks thing, but at the point that your diehard market is like dwindling and it's down to a few thousand people, at that point you have to start thinking about Maybe I should pivot. And I feel like Archie did pivot for a while because they had the very cool young version of Archie that had like Mark Waid writing it, and then I think Nick Spencer wrote it for a while, and it was while the show was on TV. And I was into that. They won me in as a reader, and then I think it just stopped. Like, I don't think they're doing that kind of like cool young soap opera Archie anymore. And I know the moment kind of passed because Riverdale's not on TV anymore, but it just is like who is the new reader who's buying this? Saz Murph says, I still like the Archie comics when they're drawn in a classic style, probably a nostalgia thing. Yeah, but Saz Murph, we're all getting up in years. Those of us who have that nostalgia. That's all that I'm talking about there. So, Black Ritual, Book of Nyx. This is a Spawn universe title highlighting the current Queen of Hell and how she got there. It's written by Thomas Healy, art by Nat Jones, lettering by And World Design. I really liked this a lot. The first issue, I kind of was like, okay, this is useful because it grounds us in this character. And Nyx had her moment in Spawn literally 200 issues ago. I think it was flashing back to something that happened around issue 164, if I'm not mistaken, and we're at 364 later in this week. So it's 200 issues of Spawn in the past, and so we're just following her. And right now, it's like, how is she going to get to be the Queen of Hell? She's a witch. She had left New York, but she came back. The other witch coven in New York doesn't want any part of her, and so she's trying to rebuild her life, but she's being chased by somebody who's trying to goad her into doing something. And it really, really worked for me. It was creepy, this idea of this witch killer who's kind of like slowly stalking the witches in the city, and it's kind of the question is like, is she chasing him or is he chasing her? I really, really like that. All of the murder was actually quite scary without being like over the top bloody. And I really found myself, I think this is doing a good job with the idea that there's this hook that we know she's going to be the Queen of Hell. And this seems like such small ball. She's just a witch back in New York City. And just that drama, that tension of like, how are we going to get there in a small number of issues, I think is even heightening how much I enjoyed this. And I really did enjoy it. Super Jop saying, Krisis, I really like this. Me, not by Todd. Yeah. Although, we are going to get to a Todd book later. Spoilers, we're going to get to a Todd McFarlane book that I actually really, really liked. And going back just one book, Logan Wayne says, Archie's crossing over with Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob, Askew-verse or whatever it's called, and it's definitely not kids playing Fortnite. Well, but again, Jay and Silent Bob, is there anybody under 30 who cares about Jay and Silent Bob? I don't know. I assume that's a 30, 40, and 50-year-old thing. I'm just saying, Archie had this brief moment in time where the audience was actually expanding in an organic way and new people were interested in it. And that to me seems like it's the goal for any comic book company releasing any comics, because it's such a small market and the difference of 2,000 more people buying your comic is like life and death. I just don't understand who it's for right now. Which is not to say that it's good or bad. It's nothing against it. I'm just like, comics do better when you know who they're for, is what I'm saying. Spawn is a great example of that, to bring this to the comic that we're talking about right now. Todd McFarlane kind of looked at the people who were buying Spawn month in and month out, and he said two things. He said, one, this is an audience who probably could buy other titles, because if you look back prior to 2021, there was no other Spawn title. For years and years and years, it was just Spawn. So on one hand, however many people were buying Spawn every month, 5,000, 10,000, who knows, he was like, okay, these are probably people who I could get to buy a second book or a third book. And then on the other half of that equation, he also said, you know what, if I have more books, there's going to be more creators, and they might be creators that people are a fan of, and that might bring more readers in. So actually, Todd made this calculated risk of like, if there were more Spawn books, would that sell more across the line, and would it grow this base of people who buy everything Spawn? And I think it did, because I think the marketing of that brought a lot of people like me back to Spawn to be like, oh, what are all these other books? And so now I'm willing to bet you money that Spawn is selling a higher base of comics now than it was 5 years ago. So like, to me, that's what I kind of thought Archie was going to do, and then it just seems like they didn't go all the way. Okay, this is called The Cold Witch. Hey, Rexmo. This is called The Cold Witch, and it's part of a series of The Shrouded College, which was created by Charles Soule, who's the writer here, and Will Sliney, who's the artist here, colors by Rachel Rosenberg, who you don't often see coloring at Image, letters by Crank. And so the solicit said, you don't have to know anything about this. It's all of them standalone. They're all standalone tales from The Shrouded College. That was a fucking lie, because you absolutely had to know what The Shrouded College was to read this. If you don't know who they are, it doesn't answer it at all. It says this one person's the 6th target, but they died, but the 13th target wants to leave the Shrouded College. What is the Shrouded College? And you know what? I can set that kind of thing aside if the comic book is interesting. I will say this had an interesting concept. I love them going into this infinite library, and there's just this like weird floating head brain thing that's the keeper of the library, but he's also a prisoner there, and so they drug him so that they could take his books. Like, that's a cool concept on its own, and Will Sliney's art is always good, but I just came away from this like, you didn't get me hooked, Charles Soule. Like, you lied in your solicit. You said I was going to be able to just pick this up and feel excitement, but you didn't tell me who any of these characters were or why to care about them. And also, I was promised that this was going to be about the Cold Witch, and we saw this cool thing in the cover, and this never happened in the issue. The issue is all about the ex-wife of the guy who died fighting the Cold Witch, wanting to find out how she killed him. That all broken promises from front to top, from bottom to end. All broken promises. I'm dropping this immediately. F you, Charles Soule and Will Sliney, and whoever wrote your goddamn solicit. I'm really upset about that. This looked really cool. Oh, by the way, some more hellos. The name changes. Hola to you, bonjour. And AS checking in and saying hello. This looked really cool. Cool air. I mean, not just because it's called cool air, it just looked neat. This hand with, are they tattoos? Is it henna? It looks like lots of little diamonds, but then the tentacles floating out of the sleeve. So I might try to track this down. It's one of those ones that I kind of skipped because I didn't know what it was, but then when I was putting the cover together, it's like, this does kind of look cool. Okay, Daredevil. Okay, Daredevil. This is Daredevil number 21. Of course, it's got 18 different artists on it, because God forbid we can even get through one issue of Daredevil with the same artist. I don't understand what editorial is doing here. It's written by Saladin Ahmed. The artists here are Jose Luis Suarez, inked by Oren Jr., and then Carlos Nieto inking himself. Jesus Abertev and Eric Arciniega are the colorists, and Clayton Cowell the letterer. Okay, here's the thing. The art in this was spectacular, actually. Jose Luis Suarez, who I'm not familiar with your game, sir, but his way of drawing Matt and Matt's world as he, like, hears his Daredevil radar world, but he's also trying to understand this fungus infection he has that's growing mushrooms out of him, and his whole thing is, like, fungus is actually a lot like flesh, so even though I can tell it's not my flesh, it's somewhat invisible to my senses. Very cool. I was totally into the art, and if this book could keep the same artist on it for 2 issues in a row, or even in this case for a full issue, maybe I could let go of how dull the plot is and just be like, you know what, this is an art book, and it's fine for Daredevil to be an art book, and I'm going to buy it because it's an art book. Unfortunately, I have no way of knowing who the artist is going to be next issue, because this book has changed artists every 1.5 issues. I'm sure somebody's going to come back, Aaron Cooder or somebody. If you just told me that Jose Luis Suarez was going to keep drawing this for a whole arc, I would keep reading it. Also, a lot of this is color effects, so we have to give credit to Jesus Abertev and Eric Arciniega, because a lot of this is being done on the color layer. I'm so frustrated. Marvel editorial really sank this book in a lot of different ways. They sank it because they let Saladin Ahmed do that whole arc for 19 issues, but they also sank it by being terrible coordinators of art. Like, that's not Saladin Ahmed's job. That's editorial's job, and editorial failed. Apparently, people are informing me that it has been canceled. It's been canceled, ending around 25. I think Marvel's doing a full line relaunch in September and October. You know, I've been banging that drum this whole year that the books are long in the tooth. They need a fresh starting point. It's been since 2018. So I know books are ending. I'm not going to call anything canceled right now until I see what the reboot is. Daredevil's never been canceled. Daredevil always comes back with like a miniseries or something. It just, one volume just ends. So I don't know that it might be Saladin Ahmed still writing it when it comes back. Who knows? I mean, I don't have a problem with him as a writer. I just hope it's a different editor when it comes back. So I'm not going to use the C word. I don't think any of these books are canceled that are ending around August, September, October. It's also the end of Imperial. It's also the end of One World Under Doom. We're clearly going into a line-wide relaunch. So I don't think we could say it's getting canceled because it was horrible, is basically what I'm saying. I think everything is getting canceled, but we'll see. Dark regards. I have some dark regards about this book. You know what? For a certain person, this would be hilarious. So I really want to focus not on how much I hated it, but on who it is for. It is written by Dave Hill, art by Artyom Topolin, colors from Brittany Peer, letters by Troy Pateri. Here's the thing. So it's about, this is more Daredevil. Here's the thing. It's about this guy who once played metal when he was in high school, and everybody hated it. And so he goes on to have this like kind of normie norm life, and he wants to find a reason to still be on stage. He tries stand-up comedy. It's not for him, and he gets reintroduced to the idea of metal in this truly hilarious, and this was my favorite part of the issue, sequence where he goes to this record store and the clerk in the record store just hates him. She hates life. She hates everything. He wants to buy black metal, and all of her warnings for him are like, do you have any like fillings? Okay, you shouldn't listen to this record. Or like, are you on the second floor? Okay, maybe only turn the volume up to 10. It's really funny because she's just one of these like evil, too cool for you shopkeeper people, and she's basically like super gatekeeping him in the most ridiculous ways, and you don't know if to take it literally or not when she's saying this black metal is too heavy for you if you've got fillings. Like, are you supposed to take it literally? And so this is about basically how he bluffs his way into being a heavy metal band. Like, he has no experience. He's just bought his first guitar since high school. But he's like, you know what? This is what I'm meant to do. And so basically he bluffs his way into being the new black metal thing. I didn't really like the art. I didn't really like the story. I didn't really think it was funny. But I think if you're somebody who does like black metal and that concept sounds funny to you, I think it could be for you. I don't think you would get the jokes more than me because I do think most of the bands that she talks about here are made up, which we know really bugs me. I want real bands that I can go on there to Spotify or whatever and listen to their music. But just because I truly hated this and deeply regretted spending $5 on it, I do understand who it is for. And that person is not me. Like, I don't think Viking : is a real band. Let's Google. Is Viking : Viking : a real band? Viking : I dread to see. No, I'm getting Viking cologne. It likely refers to Viking cologne, a popular men's fragrance. Okay, so probably not a real band. Could be wrong, but that was just at a glance on Google. Okay. This is vampires versus, or I don't know, what DC versus vampires World War V. I read an issue. It wasn't for me. Enjoy it if you're enjoying it. The thing is, it's not just a vampire story anymore. It's like vampires versus Darkseid. And I know it's called World War V, but that doesn't tell me anything. It should be DC versus vampires versus Darkseid. Darkseid. I say Darkseid because I learned everything in my head without hearing any real people talking about them. I'll catch up on Dick Tracy here and there, but it was just too boring to get me excited to read it every week. Now we come to a book that I love. Y'all, if you're not reading Doctor Strange of Asgard, I don't know what to tell you. This is creeping its way up to be my favorite superhero comic book right now. It is neck and neck with Dark Patterns. That's how good it is. You know how insanely freaking excited we all are about every issue of Dark Patterns? That's how excited I need you. That's the level of excitement I need you to start bringing to this book. It's written by Derek Landy, art by Carlos Magno, the best art I have ever seen from Carlos Magno, possibly because he's being colored by Espen Grutensjern, who's killing it. Letters by Corey Petit. The broad stroke of this, you've heard me say it twice before, is Doctor Strange is in Asgard because he's like, hey, I can't be the Sorcerer Supreme on Earth right now, but maybe I could be the Sorcerer Supreme on Asgard, which in the end could help us halt Doom's march through the multiverse, which is surely going to happen after he gets bored of just ruling over Earth. But the thing that's great about this is that Derek Landy is digging into parts of Asgard we've never seen before, digging into this doctor's office in Asgard, not like the royal doctor of Thor, just some doctor on the street who deals with the Asgardians who just go out and get hit in the head with an axe when they're fighting trolls, deals with what Asgardians do on their day off, deals with what an Asgardian pub is like, deals like with what happens when a bunch of Asgardians do decide they want to go and hunt some trolls. What is that like? Trolls are sentient beings, so we have people from Asgard just out on a trip to like kill other people that happen to be trolls. It's just so interesting to me. And we know a trope that I generally like in general is the idea of bureaucracy and the simple life in the world of a superhero. I love when a superhero is brought low and they've got to deal with these things. And Doctor Strange, who can be a little bit above it all, who can be a little bit snooty, who can be like, how did the plebes do this? Doctor Strange having to deal with the culture shock of Asgard on top of dealing with this everyday stuff. It's just so compelling to me. And if you have been staring at this art this whole time and are not amazed, I don't know what to tell you. It looks like some kind of like crazy amazing European BD comic book. Like, it's so incredible. I've always had issues with how Carlos Magno does line weights. Like, sometimes it just feels like his lines get so thin that they start to look aliased and like scratchy and broken up. I think he solved it. And the colors, I think Espen Grutensjern proving here, you've got to go super, super saturated on Carlos Magno's art so that all the blackness of his lines stands out. I originally had 15 pages saved from this. Like, literally every page I just was doing a double take, and the writing was good. Derek Landy is inside of Doctor Strange's head, really giving us his narration of the situation. I love how it plays with like Doctor Strange's not just his being a doctor and being a magician, but almost like his hyper focus. Like, it deals a little bit with the idea of, I don't think it's saying what if Doctor Strange was neurodivergent, but it's dealing with this idea that he does get super focused on things. Like, he needs to go on this troll hunt with the Asgardians, and it's like he almost forgets the whole rest of his mission because he's like, I'm on this troll hunt right now. And that focus serves him well as the Sorcerer Supreme, and it serves him well in his comic book. And it's also funny to see here how easily it is to like get his eye taken off the ball as he gets enamored with and enveloped by this, what life is like in Asgard. I just could not possibly recommend this any higher to you. Rexma loves when Doctor Strange is, well, and also I've got my bad pronunciation gang here. Logan Wade, who calls him Darkseid until seeing the animated series. Jamie C47 calling it Genosha with a hard G. I forget that every time. I literally have to look it up on the internet every time I'm going to say Genosha out loud. Cedric and Ellen saying Doctor Strange of Asgard is great. I love a murder mystery. And that's the other thing. I love a murder mystery, and I super extra love a murder mystery where it tells you the answer right at the beginning. This murder mystery is like, here's who did the murder, but now we have to figure out why. Was it their choice? Like, that to me is interesting. So much more interesting than like a straight up who done it. This is the Energon Universe Free Comic Book Day issue, which is also the 2025 special. It came out in physical for pay version on May 14th. They still have not put it out digitally. It does eventually come out digitally. When it comes out digitally, I'll read it and we'll do it as a catch up. Okay. A couple of weeks ago, all of you, when I started doing these again, all of you were like, are you going to read Exquisite Corpses? And I was a little hesitant because I know that the trope of Exquisite Corpse in storytelling tends to mean that people take turns telling the story. It means that you've patchworked something together. You've Frankenstein something together. That's what Exquisite Corpse means. So even though this is being launched by James Tynion IV and Michael Walsh, I was kind of expecting that it was going to be an anthology series. And Michael Walsh has done a lot of that, like his Silver Coin, which also had James Tynion writing the first issue, if I'm not mistaken. However, this is not a traditional anthology. It looks like it's more of an anthology jam where it's a singular story, and it's a story with a very firm plot and very specific characters. But over time, different writers and maybe different artists are going to be taking over parts of it. And because these characters are all against each other, different artists and writers might make decisions that put this in different situations than this original creative team intended. By the way, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by my favorite letterer, Becca Carey. So first of all, I've just got to say, we're going to go over a minute on this, obviously. Partially because you demanded it. So part of what I love is James Tynion just makes queerness so routine in his books, and I love that. Let normalize queerness. Have queerness in every single comic. These two boys are boyfriends. Nobody's discriminating against them because they're gay. There's no plot about their gayness. They're just boyfriends. They're just boyfriends in the same way that somebody's a boyfriend or girlfriend in a book, and I love it. And so they have different plans on Halloween. One of them gets roped into doing some babysitting, but then we get into the real insanity of this issue. So it is like Hunger Games crossed with Battle Royale, crossed with Greg Rucka and Michael Lark's Lazarus. The concept of this could not be more my shit, possibly. Like, it got me right in the solar plexus. So the idea is that there are 13 families in America who were originally the 13 families of the original colonies, but that's drifted a little bit over the years. And they're the ones secretly controlling America still. So a little shade of Tom King's Wonder Woman in here too. But every 5 years, not every 4 years with the presidential election, who knows why, every 5 years, they basically do The Purge. Oh, it's also kind of like The Purge. They do a night where they find one location, one place, one town, one idyllic little community, and they each send a killer in. The killer could be like a serial killer, it could be a crazy person, it could be like a soldier, a mercenary, anybody, an arsonist, and they set all their killers on the town, and whatever killer kills the most other people and racks up the most points, their family rules America for the next 5 years. So that's their version of an election. I don't feel bad about spoiling it for you because this is already up to issue number 2 or number 3 here. Now I'm feeling a little more liberal, a little more liberal with the spoilers since I'm a little bit behind. And so this is a very long issue. I think it was like 60 pages, and it shows all of the fighters that these people have recruited. And some of them, this guy, Rascal Randy, he's just this crazy murder person who wears a mascot costume and strangles people. Oh, and Shades of Clue, my favorite movie. Every one of the families draws a random card after the first 5 years to get ready for the next 5 years. And the card has what weapon their killer has to use. So you can't just send in killers strapped with everything. They can only kill with the things they got. So this family got hands, and so that's why they found this crazy strangle bunny. I am obsessed. I mean, talk about taking every single thing I'm already obsessed with. James Tynion, obsessed. Clue, obsessed. Lazarus, obsessed. This is like a whole stack of themes that I'm obsessed with. It's executed at a very high level. The one critique I could have of it is that it does focus on some local people to kind of give us a little bit of a heart to track through this murder fight so that it's not just murderers. I just wish we had met a few more local people. It feels like they're probably going to show us more in the upcoming issues, and that'll be fine. It just felt like the local focus was a little bit overly tight, and maybe I could have stood to be introduced to a little bit more of a variety of people. But that's a ridiculous critique. Like, they had 60 pages to pack a lot of things into. Just personally, I just felt like it cut back to like the boyfriends and the kid they're babysitting like 1 times too many. That's my only critique of this issue. I absolutely loved it. It was really hard not to just buy issue number 2 and read it since it already exists out there, but we've got to catch up. I highly recommended. Loved Exquisite Corpses so much. It's really going to capture my attention. Next, we come to Fire and Ice, When Hell Freezes Over. So here's the thing, and I think I talked about this a little bit last time. I talked about issue 1 of this. I read the previous Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville series by Joanne Starr, and I thought it was so bad. Like, I didn't laugh a single time, and I just had to drop it. So I laughed constantly. Every page. And I think part of it is that the artist that she had last time, Buchos, Natalia Buchos, she does not sell comedy, which is fine. You can be a good artist and not sell jokes, but if you've got a writer like Joanne Starr who's delivering jokes every panel, you need somebody like a Steve Lieber who can deliver the jokes every panel. Stephen Byrne is absolutely capable of that, here colored by Tamara Bonville and lettered by Ariana Mayer. So, you know, first, Fire and Ice have switched powers, and so then they switch bodies so that they'll be in the body that has the right power, even though it's the wrong body. But then, of course, they don't know. The one of them is very modest, the other one's very immodest, and so they start having problems how each other are using their bodies. Then all of their friends get swapped by mistake, and they're a hilarious group of people with very specific personalities and diversity from each other. So when they get swapped, there's so much comedy about who winds up as who. I mean, one of them is a gorilla. There's so many beats to play. And then they also have this robot who's convinced that he's the mayor of the town. Is he the mayor of the town? I'm actually not that sure. So he's in the hospital with all of them who've just switched, and he's stealing babies from the maternity ward to kiss them. And she says, Elrond, put those sweeties back before someone misses them. And he says, I am kissing babies for political gain. I laughed through every single page of this. I think I do want Fire and Ice to be treated seriously at some point. Like, I don't just want them to be Harley Quinn. I think they were serious characters, and they can be serious characters. But while we're in their comedy era, I cannot imagine it being done better than this. I just really love this. And it really goes to show you could be the funniest writer. You could be Chip Zdarsky. You could be anybody else. Kelly Thompson's very, very funny. You could be the funniest writer. And if you do not have an artist who can sell the faces that people are making as they're making the jokes, their reactions to the jokes, like, so this is great. One of the people who body swaps is some guy, I think it was like one of the white guys, body swaps into this woman of color, and he's going in her body, I've always wondered what this felt like. I've never been allowed to touch it. Touchy, and he's not talking about like her breasts or anything, he's talking about her hair. And it's just such a funny beat, and the way that the art sells her with her just tugging and touching her hair, and the look of delight on her face, which is really this guy in her body in there, it's just hilarious, and it's being sold by the art. Okay, Logan Wayne asking, do I like Lazarus? It is my favorite comic book, full stop. Literally my favorite comic book. I haven't opened it yet because I've just been so busy, but every time a new hardcover comes out, I reread the whole series of Lazarus. So I'm due for a reread. I don't know when that time is going to be found in my life, but it is going to happen. Yeah, it's my favorite comic book, I think, of all time. Yeah, I that and like Excalibur by Alan Davis are at the top of my pyramid. Okay. That joke sold me on the book. LMAO. This is, Logan Wayne missed the title. This is Fire and Ice, When Hell Freezes Over, issue number 2. It's just it's a very funny book. You don't have to know who Fire and Ice are. I think it's fine if you didn't read the first one. I'm following it just fine. It's just, if you like that very Matt Fraction, Chip Zdarsky kind of humor, but you want to see it with like an all female cast and a woman writer, that's what this is. It's very that. If you liked the Jimmy Olsen series, it's very that. Very, very, very that. Okay. Let's continue. Wow, I feel like we're kind of flying through them today. I don't know, maybe it's just me. This looks cool, and I just didn't have time to see if I could find it. It's called The First Americans from Critical Entertainment. It might be on Global Comics. Let's just do a little looky-loo, a little peeky-peek to see if it's on Global Comics. Because so it's about like the first people who migrated to the Americas, I think, and like over land bridges. It is on Global Comics. Okay, let's see how many issues are on Global Comics. Is it all of them? Because then I will absolutely read it next week. Okay, so it's on Global Comics, and here I'll just drag this so we can see. So it looks like both issues are up there, and let's just take a look at the art real quick. I'm not going to scroll through a lot of issues. I would never spoil it for you. The First Americans, written by Christopher Ria, illustrated by Tad Galusha, lettered by Travis Lanham. Oh, it's about like archaeologists and the artifacts that they found and like how that says that people migrated from different. Oh, this looks really cool. This looks really, really cool. Okay. I'm going to read this for next week. If you have Global Comics, check it out. It's called The First Americans, and I'm going to catch up for next week. It didn't even occur to me to look on Global Comics. I should have, because I've read other things from Critical Entertainment on Global Comics. This cover, just like the mammoth skull and her like, ooh. Totally into it. Hello to Adrian Montanas. A lot of you are watching today. I was starting to think that maybe y'all are just already on your summer vacations, but you're here and I really appreciate you spending your day with me. Okay, let's continue. Flash Gordon. So here's the thing about the series. I love this. And I just have a dim awareness of Flash Gordon up to this point. Jeremy Adams, man. Jeremy Adams, if you're not reading DC right now, you don't know that this guy is about to take over the universe. Like he's like Jed MacKay levels of everything he writes you really can kind of just trust. And he's writing all the Green Lantern books right now. And I don't even like Green Lantern and I like those books, but this is about Flash Gordon. So he's writing this, which is kind of sort of in the same oeuvre as Green Lantern. But the whole concept of this Flash Gordon is that this big cataclysm happened before the series, and Flash Gordon is kind of playing catch up to everything that changed in the universe since the cataclysm. I will say the cover artist here is Will Conrad, who I'm obsessed with. He's one of my favorite artists. Inside is Tom Derenick, who's a very kind of Alan Davis, Paul Pelletier, a little bit more lines and rendering than either of them, but he very much is in that Paul Pelletier zone for me. The art is fine. It's not bad. It gets gawky here or there, but you know what? Even Alan Davis and Paul Pelletier have their kind of pulling gawky moments. But the thing that's rewarding about this is we kind of fill in a big piece, which is Dale, his lover, who is like the princess of the universe or whatever. We've been seeing her be kind of evil. And so we finally find out here, why was she evil? I think it's satisfying. Last, she was a little bit too decompressed for me, and I just couldn't get into it. This issue felt like it was going somewhere, and I just find, like, I see the cover to this comic book every month, and I'm like, yeah, I'm excited to read that. And part of it is because it's Will Conrad art in the cover. I'm obsessed. But it's just something about it is very fun to me, and I think there's a lot of boring things you could do with Flash Gordon, retelling his origin, kind of just having him do the swashbuckling thing through space, but having this universe where he doesn't fully understand the map of the universe and all the power structures are unsettled because of whatever it is that he's missed has really made it so compelling to me. Jamie C47 picked up the first trade of Flash Gordon and loved it. Yeah, that first 5 issues are like, mwah, it's perfect. Perfect. As someone with zero context of Flash Gordon other than the song, Rye Hunter, hello to you. We'll always try a Jeremy Adams book after his amazing Flash run. And hey, if you just cover part of this up with your hand, it does say Flash. Okay. And Kane, I'm still looking forward to reading the deluxe edition of Flash Gordon. I didn't even know that was happening. I vaguely remember the series or cartoon show, but what I do remember was good is making me excited for this. Yeah, I'm so happy. To me, this is like the thesis statement of why I do this show, because I would have never I would have been like, Jeremy Adams, whatever, Flash Gordon, whatever, and I would have missed it. I would have missed that Will Conrad was doing interior art in the first 5 issues, and I love Will Conrad, and I would have missed that this is a delightful comic book. So, like, I'm so happy that I read it, and even though it's not my top comic book, it does bring me joy every time. Okay, let's move on. Now we come to, I don't read Gotcha Man from Mad Cave, Only One Earth, number 4. Cool cover, though. Cool cover. Geiger. I am catching up on Geiger. I think I'm up to issue 8 or 9, so I might make it all the way for issue 15. I can't say that I like it. I can't. Those are not words that can come out of this mouth. But I am catching up on it for you, because you demanded it. I'm catching up on Geiger. I didn't read The Glopple from Keenspot, although we did establish you can buy digital comics on Keenspot's website, so there are some that I do intend to try. I didn't read Godzilla Here There Be Aliens. Here There Be Aliens. That's because it's a continuation of a number of other Godzilla miniseries. Here There Are Monsters or Here There Be Monsters. It's written by Frank Thierry and it's Godzilla, so it already has 2 strikes against it in my book. I don't know that I need to pick it up, but there it is. So then Godzilla vs. the X-Men. I didn't read it because they're out of continuity and I just can't be bothered. Although it was by Fabian Nicieza, so I had it like at the bottom of my list. Like if I have enough time, I could read this. But then I wound up catching up on another thing that we'll get into later that I read 12 issues of all as a binge. So then I never got to this. Golden Rage I dropped. You can see me talk about it last month. It's about all these old ladies that have kind of been sent to an island where they can just live out their lives just as old ladies, and they're not actually old, they're infertile. That's why the society has no use for them anymore. And so it was such a good concept, and then nothing really happened, and then the second series started and nothing really happened, and then it kind of like airdropped in this one plot point, like, look, something's happening now. I'm like, well, okay, but if none of the characters are interesting and nothing is happening without airdropping this plot point in, do we actually need to make this work of art right now? And my answer was no. I did a while ago drop Green Hornet and Miss Fury, although the interior art in this was fantastic. But if you remember, my problem with it was Green Hornet was just an asshole full time on every page. And I was like, what? I'm rooting for him to die. And Miss Fury wasn't in it enough to make me excited to read it, to continue to root for him to die when that was my primary interest in the comic book. Okay. Ooh, hold on. We gotta go back. Jamie says Godzilla vs. X-Men, the worst of the Godzilla vs. Marvel books at that point, in my opinion, which would be hard for it to be worse than the Hulk thing one for me, because I hated that one. And plus Nicieza, but if you say it, I trust you, because that means I don't have to read it. By the way, if you see me do this a lot in streams, it's because I'm in this chair that squeaks too much, and I have to take it outside and WD-40 it, but I don't want the comic room to smell like WD-40, and I don't want it to drip onto the carpet. And so I'm constantly trying to adjust how I'm sitting in the chair without it making all these. Can you hear all these noises? I don't know. This will be finally, I'll know on stream how noisy is the chair. So if you see me bopping around like this all the time, which drives me crazy when I watch this back, like to put the chapter markers in it, it's because I'm trying to maneuver in the chair without making it squeak. So now you know. Okay. Oh, Green Lantern Corps. Okay. So here's the thing about this Green Lantern Corps issue. I am obsessed with Fernando Pasarin's art. And it's really, really hard for anybody else to stand up to that. He does the cover here. And this interior art is most of it's by V. Ken Marion, who is in that Capullo imitators group for me, along with like Gleb Melkonov, where the line weights are a little too thin for me sometimes. And then there's one page by Amikai Nemelpan. It's colored by Arif Prianto, letters by Dave Sharp. By the way, I didn't say this in my top 12 earlier, but this is actually co-written by Jeremy Adams and Morgan Hampton. Adams gets the top credit on the cover because people know who he is, but in the interior, Morgan Hampton gets the top credit. This book is really good. Like, I will say that this art, it just took me out a little bit. The art was so polished and serious and severe before, because that's what Pasarin can deliver. But so I just thought that this was like a little on the sillier, cartoonier side from Marion, and I didn't really enjoy it quite as much. But I thought it was going to really take me out of it, but it didn't, because it was perfect for this story, which is basically 2 lanterns, Guy Gardner and who was the other one, and Boz, take on 2 different sidekicks on a mission, and they wind up going on missions to the same place, and they both wind up getting into a lot of trouble in that place. I think because this was focused on a pair of younger characters, you could get away with showing the younger characters and having it look a little silly, because it was that kind of a misadventure. But I will just show my credits PDF, because this is the credits. Well, this is the credits page, and this is not by Pasarin. This is by MMK Nalpan. This is what I generally want from this. This really kind of glowy, perfect, Star Warsy Jedi kind of look, and that's what Pasarin is so good at doing. And so when I saw that last page, I think that probably is like a tickler that the next issue is going to be back to the kind of like hyper cool, hyper rendered, hyper violence. But I just love this book. I love the Green Lanterns. I love getting to spend time with all of them. And I think what I've discovered over the years is I will always take a Green Lantern Corps book over a singular Green Lantern book, because actually this, much like X-Men, I think the magic is in all of the obscure characters. And that's what I've really grown to love about Green Lantern. So there you go. Okay. Grim Tales of Terror. This So this is their anthology series of individual tales of folk horror, and you never can quite tell if the folk horror is real or they've just made it up. This is called The Hat Man, and it's kind of like a Freddy Krueger character, so I don't know if they're just trying to do like off-label, filed-off serial number Freddy Krueger, or if this is a real folk horror, or if they just made it up and weren't even thinking of Freddy Krueger. This really worked for me, and part of it was the artwork. I think this artist, Dario Carrasco, at first I was a little nervous because like everybody, there was just a lot of lines, and I think when you put a lot of lines on a lot of faces, it sometimes just goes a little amateurish for me, but he had a real sense of panache. I loved this sequence of this woman's life and how no matter where she is on her day, there's always some stupid bullshit happening to her, and like she just, you know, she remains the same, the background changes. Also, really good colors here from Juan Manuel Rodriguez. The script was like a little bit like, oh, she's a single mom and she's a waitress. It kind of was like, okay, this feels very TV pilot from the 1980s. But I don't hold that against Chaz Pangburn, who's the writer. I think you've only got one issue to do this in, because these are single issue anthology series. You've got to go with the tropes. So you've got to set up like a tropey, easy to understand character. What really worked for me, I wish I got another page of it. What really worked for me is it was scary. Like I was in suspense, and the ending was really unsuspected. I was like, oh wow, that would not have been how I guessed you would wrap up the story. And it wrapped it up in such a way that I actually wanted to read another issue. Like if they told me this was going to spin off into like a miniseries, I would have absolutely bought it. So I was like, damn, Zenescope and there was nothing like sexy cheesecake about this. That is very much the Grimm Fairy Tales brand at Zenescope. This brand, I mean, I guess we saw like a woman in bed with somebody at some point, but it was not cheesecakey at all. It was like literally a good horror comic, and I'm always rooting for Zenescope, and I'm like, yeah, man, this is the reputation that you should have in the market, that you do actual good scary comics, because I think right now there's a lot of other publishers who are trying to like nip at like, oh, we do the scary comics. No, Zenescope is actually very good at this. Okay. I mean, this to me as a one-shot horror story that stands alone was so much better than those Oni Press EC branded things like Cruel Kingdom and the horror one too. Like, I don't know. I feel like Hello Darkness probably has the market on this cornered right now from Boom, which is like, what is that? Is it curated by Garth Ennis or something like that? But like, I don't know. I like when Zenescope succeeds. I want to see them do well. Okay, let's continue. I know you're waiting for my reaction to Gwenpool. Gwenpool #1, written by Kevin Scott, art by Stefano Nessi, colors from Matt Milla, and letters from Ariana Mayer. So look, the idea of resurrecting the original Gwenpool, or the original Gwen Stacy, I should say, is terrible enough. And then to make her part of the X program, she's like X31 or X32 or something, and then to make her like a contract killer. Like, I know that Marvel has often played with the idea that if Gwen Stacy had survived, that she would be some kind of hero. They played with it during Age of Apocalypse. They played with it many, many times. And now we see alternate Gwen as Spider-Gwen, and now we have Gwenpool. Like, we get it. We get that you're like, eventually we would have turned her into a hero. But this idea, I hate it. But it turns out this really is a Gwenpool comic book. Like, I was afraid it was all going to be about this new murder Gwenpool, but it actually seems like, if it's based on this issue, that it's going to be about the Gwenpool we actually all know and love, trying to come to terms with the fact that the Gwen Stacy that she was a fan of from reading the comic books has been brought back and is using her code name and is now like a murder Wolverine Gwen Stacy, and like her reacting to that. That, to me, there are some legs there. The idea of our funny fourth wall breaking Gwenpool reacting to Marvel making Gwenpool a murder bot Gwenpool, there's something funny there. Unfortunately, Kevin Scott is not the writer to handle that. You can see him trying to do these Gwenpool gags that we've seen other writers like Christopher Hastings and Leah Williams do. Kevin Scott is not that guy. He's a fine writer. He just doesn't have that voice. He doesn't have that humor. And the artist, Stefano Nessi, I mean, he's not even drawing Jeff adorable enough. And what is going on with these faces? Like, why? See these little cuts in her cheek? Like, not cuts, but like the ink cuts. Those are not dimple cuts. Those are like cheekbone cuts. They should be higher. Her mask is too low. The mask looks wrong. Like, where is Kate Bishop's neck here? It's just, this is the wrong team. This feels like a bargain basement team on this. The colors are great. Good job, Matt Milla. Love the colors in that Spider-Man costume. A+ for me. It's just, the thing is, now that I know what the concept is, and I know the concept is funny Gwenpool reacting in a fourth wall breaking way to murder Gwenpool, I said the book is going to have a good concept to work. That is a good concept. I think it works. That is a great thing to sell, and it's a great thing to bait and switch us with. This is going to be about murder, Gwenpool. But this creative team is not going to do anything worthwhile, unfortunately. So I think if they had gotten a funny writer on this, there's a lot of them out there. If they had gotten a writer who's known for being funny on this, and if they had got an artist who like could sell humor a little bit instead of just whoever this person is, Stefano Nasi, there could have been a good comic book in this. So that's editorial's fault, right? Unless they just had Kavan Scott pitch this, but I sincerely doubt he just pitched this. I'm sure they had this concept developed and they gave it to him. I just think that we saw in that Fire and Ice book, if the creative team from the Fire and Ice book was doing this, it would be, even with the same plot and almost all the same scenes, it would be laugh out loud, slap your knee, cackling, hilarious. That's what this should be, and the concept could work, but this team is not capable of turning in work at that quality, I don't think. Max Appleman, who probably needs to go to sleep, says, Gwenpool, honestly, not as bad as expected, but very much lacking in the humor department, which is kind of a major thing for Gwenpool. Well, as always, you all say it a lot better than I do. Jamie C47, this has to be some sort of Gwenpool fake out where she writes it out of existence or something. Well, that's the thing. I think playing with the tension of her fourth wall breaking in the scope of presenting this character that we're all rolling our eyes at, that's perfect. That's a great concept. Better creative team would do a better job with it. Okay, let's continue. To Helverine. You know that I love my pansexual murder son Daken. And you know that I actually am enjoying Benjamin Percy writing him more than I enjoyed Benjamin Percy writing Wolverine or writing Ghost Rider. However, Benjamin Percy does this thing where he gets super focused on the toyetic qualities. And I like a toyetic book. I love thinking about the action figure. But Benjamin Percy, again and again in this Helverine, both in this series and the miniseries that came before it, he goes back to the well of like, here's a cool new bike. Let's see Daken react to the bike. And I get that he's like a Ghost Rider now and we have to care about his motorcycle. Daken doesn't care about fucking motorcycles. He doesn't care. Akihiro doesn't care about it, right? But like suddenly we've got this piece like, is that my new bike? And then we get this full-page splash. Dr. Spivvy customized the bike, including Hellfire boosters. Daken doesn't care about that, Benjamin Percy. He doesn't care. He cares about sexy times with sexy people, okay? And it's not just saying that I want this to be a book about him being slutty again, because that trope gets old for bisexual and pansexual characters. I'm just saying Percy does this thing where he gets so hyper-fixated on the gun, on the bike, on the tank in the military room, that like we lose the character of Daken. And last issue was such good character work that I was so hype. So it was so weird that this issue just was, and then Daken uses his new Ghost Rider powers to like see how the murders in this house happened, which again is interesting, but it just feels so procedural. It was like, ooh, I'm going to debut his power to you here. It didn't feel like, what is his opinion about that? He's killed lots of people. As a former murderer, what is his opinion of all of this murder? What is his reaction to it? He has created carnage this bad in the past, so he should have feelings about that, but he doesn't. So all there was here, it was Raphael Yanko's art, which is outstanding. He's one of the most interesting artists at Marvel right now. Great colors from Brian Valenza, Travis Lanham lettering. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying that Benjamin Percy, he can give me a couple of issues that were so good, which the last couple of issues of this comic book were, and then we get this. And I just don't understand where the character went in this issue, and it just didn't make any sense to me at all. Max Appleman says, I love how Percy's list of demands for writing a character is they need to wear leather jackets and ride motorcycles. He does exclusively, even his Green Arrow, I think, had a motorcycle. I think every one of his characters has a motorcycle. Again, Ienko's art, incredible. In this sequence where they're on this cruise ship and they're trying to figure out why the cruise ship is cursed and he turns into his Helverine, breathtaking. The art in the series is incredible. It seems like such a gimme to have this interesting character and just lean into what it means for him to be Ghost Rider, which, by the way, the first arc did well. So I'm not asking for something that Benjamin Percy doesn't know how to do. Would you like I dropped the hive a long time ago, but this was the final issue. Hot Valley Days and Cocaine Nights. Part of me wanted to find this in Keenspot's website just because the title is so audacious, but there's only so many hours in my day. But I do love the idea that the name of it is Hot Valley Days and Cocaine Nights. Okay, you know what? You know what I said to myself this week? You know what I said? I said self-crisis. You know what? You haven't read any any Huck. You haven't read any Mark Miller. Everybody's always like, do you hate Mark Miller? Like, no, some of his stuff is good. So this new comic came out. It's a second series. There's an original Huck, which I haven't read. But this one came out, and it's a #1 from Mark Miller. I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to read it. I think the credits might be in here because it was the last thing I read. I did read this morning. So here's the credits. It is written by Mark Miller, and it's art by Raphael Albuquerque, colors by Dave McCade, letters by Clem Robbins. So I don't know anything about this Huck. So here's what I got. He's a simple guy. He doesn't have much brain power, but he does have a superpower that lets him, he has some superhuman abilities, but he also can find anyone if he knows their name or if he has something that's very close to them. So it's like a psychometric power, but then he's also got like baseline superhero powers. But what's really interesting is I think a whole series just focused on him because he's a little dumb. I think I would be bored by that. But what's interesting about this is it's about the world around him. And I don't know if the first series was that or not. It's about his mom and how his mom also has powers. It's about how other people in this world have powers. It's about what if somebody wants to use him to find other people with powers. That kind of works for me. The art was pretty good. I didn't love the colors. And it was an interesting world. And, you know, any world that's the beginning of a superhero world, any world that's like, there's more out there like you, I kind of am into that. It's just one of the things I really, really like. And I saw a comment somewhere on the internet that kind of struck me about this is Mark Miller, much like Jason Aaron, has like cynical mode and then he's got hope mode. And it really feels like this story is, or at least this issue of the story is very much Mark Miller in hope mode. So it's none of the darkness and the kind of scatological humor that Mark Miller sometimes brings to a comic. It just was a very heartfelt comic that felt like it exists in the same kind of oeuvre as a Superman comic book. So I did enjoy that about it. I don't know if I was hooked enough to read another issue. Huck himself as a character, playing him kind of so dumb, I don't know if I have the patience to read. And maybe the first series explains that, and maybe there's more texture to it, and maybe it's something about neurodivergence or something, I'm just missing it. But here they kind of just play him stupid, and it was really already getting on my nerves by the end of the issue. But I do think it was well crafted, and there you go. Now I've read a Mark Miller comic, and I came away saying not quite good enough to keep me hooked. I think that's often my message about these people that are like major favorites, and I'm just like, ugh, like him, Jeff Johns. It's not that they're terrible writers. It's that I read the issue and I'm like, there's nothing that would make me read the next issue except for your reputation of being you. Like, I don't think there's anything about any issue of Geiger that makes me want to read another issue of Geiger other than, well, Jeff Johns, I guess. And like, you got it. This is a crowded marketplace, honey. You got to bring it. You got to bring the heat. You got to be somebody who gives me something interesting in the issue. You cannot just coast on your reputation and your name. So next is I Heart Skullcrusher. Now, I read the first 4 issues of this for the last time we had a new issue. Now it's issue number 9. I read all the way up to issue number 9. Do you ever get the sense that you read something and it's like good, but it's not for you, but you're pretty sure that whoever it is for, it's good for them? Because that's how I feel about this, by Josie Campbell, illustrated by Alessio Zano, colors from Angel de Santiago and Heather Brackle, and letters by Jim Campbell. There's something about this that I don't, it's a tournament book. It's a sports book. I forget what sports manga are called, but it's definitely very much of that, even though it's an American comic book. So it does a lot of those manga things. Like, one of the things that it'll have, like, everybody has 3 different versions of their face. They have the hyper-realistic face, they have the surprised, cutesy, cartoony face, and then they have their little adorable chibi versions when we see them in the distance. Personally, for me, that's not, how do I say this? Like, that's not something that's attractive to me. Like, I usually see that in a comic book and it takes me out of it because I'm not like a manga reader. I'm not from that oeuvre that does that kind of thing. I don't know why I keep saying oeuvre today, but it does feel like it's being used well for me here. And I really like the story that Josie Campbell has set up because it's a classic tournament arc progression, which is that the first arc about this was like just about the underdogs trying to win the tournament, right? And we've all read that. So then they, spoilers, win, which is how we get to the second arc. So now the underdogs have all been split up and drafted by other teams, and they all got to start fighting against each other in this. It's kind of Hunger Games-y, but it's also Quidditch. It's like, what if you could win by getting the ball in the goal or by killing other people? Like, which will you choose? You have choices. You could be really good at the ball part, or you could really be really good at the killing part. And this issue kind of shows what happens now that all the different people have been drafted onto different teams and they've got to play against each other. Like, are they going to play fair? Are they going to play dirty? Are they going to kill each other? So I don't love it quite as much as I did at the beginning. At the beginning, there was this explosive, crackling newness to it, and I think it wasn't leaning as hard into those particular artistic storytelling tropes because it just had so much to establish that it couldn't really afford to like do all of those art tropes. Now that we know all the characters really well, it's doing them, and it's hard for me to focus on that. Like, I don't do well in books that change art style to sell a joke. Like, I always have a really hard time with it, and I know that's partly because I'm just grounded in American comics and not in manga. That said, I feel like taking off that layer of I don't like this, I do think it's a good comic book, and I think if you're into this kind of tournament arc sports manga thing, it probably will really, really work for you because it's adorable and it's funny and it's really well crafted. It's just a little bit outside of my zone. I dropped this. I went off on it. If you remember issue number 1, I truly think it was terrible. It's called I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer. I did read The Immortal Thor number 23 as we surge forward towards the death of Thor. This is, of course, by Al Ewing, Jan Bazaldua, Matt Hollingsworth on colors, and Joe Sabino on letters. So last issue was that wonderful labyrinth of an issue that read the same forwards and backwards, perfectly constructed by Al Ewing. Now we get to what follows up on that, no matter which route you took through the labyrinth. And it's Thor fighting against this original god, this god that predates gods. He was like one of the first gods. And the thing that's really interesting here is I love that Ewing keeps playing with this idea of stories about stories, and that all you have to do to beat a god, you don't have to be a stronger god, you have to be a god who has a better story. And this is kind of about as Thor has figured that out to a degree over the course of the series, and so he's started to understand that when these elder gods fight him and have something that he's trying to protect or have something that he wants, that he has to not only fight them with all of his might, but fight them with wit, with ingenuity, with a better story. And part of why he's been exiled from Earth and he doesn't want to be on Earth right now is that Roxxon and the Enchantress have changed Thor's story enough on Earth that Thor isn't that smart on Earth and he's not that powerful on Earth, and so he's actually kind of refinding the power of his own stories on Asgard. That is such an interesting thing. I wish the comic book was doing more of that heavy lifting for me and I wasn't having to read so much of that into it. It feels, Al Ewing feels very distracted. It feels like all of these stories about these older elder gods should tie into each other more the way that the Green Door was consistent throughout his Immortal Hulk, and they just don't. It feels overworked and also underdeveloped somehow. And so I'm enjoying it because I'm really putting in the effort to try to follow it and try to enjoy it. But I just think that Al Ewing's big idea here is stretched a little too thin, and it's just too complex. Every time he tries to do this, the series gets really hard to appreciate. The series has been its best when it's been at its most simple. And I just think we're going to look back on this and it's going to read fine, but it's going to be a broad miss. I really think that. Okay, let us continue to Invincible Universe Battle Beast. Now, I'm not a big Invincible fan. I have a friend in Philadelphia who I was waiting at his house one time for something, and he had all the hardcovers, and so I just sat there and I read a whole Invincible hardcover, and the next time I was at his house I read another one. I was like, this is not for me. But I figured it was a new number 1, and again, the solicit's like, you don't have to know anything about Invincible to enjoy this, so I read it. So here's the thing I'll tell you. I just wish that Robert Kirkman and Ryan Ottley were better at making comic books. And I know that sounds like an inflammatory statement from me trying to have a hot take, but this is the same thing I felt when I first read Invincible. That would have been in 2010, so 15 years ago. It just strikes me as two people who are not actually that good at this and who are, and I know, 10,000 Robert Kirkman fans could descend upon me. Everybody who's ever watched Walking Dead, I'm telling you, I do not think he's that good at writing single issues of comic books. Much like Rob Liefeld, he is an idea guy. He has amazing ideas. His actual dialogue and pacing, nah. Ryan Ottley, I can never tell what the fuck is happening in a Ryan Ottley comic book. There's some kind of action happening here. It took me forever he's on the ground, but then he reaches behind his back to draw this sword, but then I guess he chops off this guy's arm that was holding him down, but he also kicks him, but then he's turned away towards the camera and he's got his bloody arm, and Ryan Ottley always makes me work. He has terrible choreography, terrible anatomy. I never have understood why people liked him on Invincible. He was okay on Spider-Man because I think certain people work on Spider-Man because Spider-Man is so bendy and is masked and you kind of like play with the rubbery quality, but I was so excited to like, I can get down with just like a cat guy in space murdering people. And plus the colors on this from Annalisa Leone, really, really great colors. But it was just nonsense. It was total nonsense. I love the idea of it, which is that Battle Beast is like so vicious and so evil that he's like beaten all the Invincible people to a standstill. I don't know, because like, I guess I didn't read that far into Invincible. And so now he is looking in the universe for a fight that's big and bad enough for him. And so he abducts this spaceship, kills everybody on it. And this spaceship is like, well, you should know that I feel really angry that you killed all of my crew. So I'm going to try to find something that will kill you. And Battle Beast is like, good, because I want to die. That's a cool idea that Robert Kirkman had. And I'm sure if somebody else was writing this, it would be good. So yeah, I just don't get it. And this is one of those things, like people think, Krisis, you're just having a hot take. I've read so many Robert Kirkman comics at this point. I always have this reaction to him. I do not think he is a good writer of comic scripts. Every one of his comics is boring. And it's not a hot take, it's a lukewarm or possibly a cold take, because I've felt that way about every one of his comics that anyone has handed to me since 2010. So there you go. I read a Robert Kirkman comic book other than Void Rivals. Now we know. Okay, let's see. Oh boy, some people have some thoughts on this. Lance McNair says, I read the first Invincible Compendium and enjoyed it, but have a lot of issues with the writing. I actually think the show made improvements. I've heard that a lot about the show, actually. JJ Tiffany, I think I'm right about the Invincible writer. I agree. Well, I'm not alone. You are not alone. Jamie C47, thank you with the Otley take. I expressed it recently to my cousin and reacted like I shot their dog. Yeah, I just think there's a certain comic reader who really imprints on these particular artists and the way that they draw action and then the bloodiness of the action. I think Ryan Stegman is kind of interested. I'm not saying Stegman's the same as Otley, but I think people like get really, really enamored with that particular style. But for me, who's like coming in cold and a lot of times with no affinity for a particular artist, and I'm just like, tell me a story that I can track. I'm like, I never can track the story that's being told in a Ryan Otley comic book. I never can. I just never, ever can. Okay. As someone who just recently completed reading Invincible and enjoyed it for the most part, I agree. Nice. I am, sometimes the hot takes are just takes. Sometimes they're just takes, and I appreciate your validation. Okay. Let's move on. Oh no, I think we got to the end of the eyes. Oh great, because I need a drink of water so damn bad. Okay. Well, we've reached the midpoint of our show, which means I caught a lot of comics, drink instead of comments. Lance with the great comeback. Good thing your cousin isn't John Wick. Hopefully. Very, very funny. And then next, everybody's dunking on him. And another Kirkman mediocrity. I just wanted to say hi officially to JJ Tiffany, who joined us midway through. Excited for some good reviews. Nobody promised that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay. I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to catch some of the things that you have done. Instead of Ask Me Anything, we're going to put up one of the other banners, which is no wrong answers. So you can ask me a thing, and then I will give my answer, which can't be wrong because it's my answer. But then I want everybody in the chat to answer that as well. And there are no wrong answers. So if Ryan Stegman is your favorite artist, if Ryan Otley is your favorite artist, if Robert Kirkman is your favorite writer, there are no wrong answers. Okay, we're just going to practice some radical acceptance. But right now I'm going to radically scroll all the way up to the beginning and see... Novarg was just saying that I love that I made a connection with Superman, with his character whose name is L. It just totally made his week. We already got to that comment about Life of Chuck. Whenever I buy new things, now I think I have to live with this item for the indefinite future. Am I committed to marrying it? I think that's a good way to think about it. Again, because I think for people like me, who I'm very materialistic. I will come right out and say it. I love things. I think partially because I grew up quite poor and partially because I love media. I just love things. I love the tactile nature of them. I like collecting and amassing things. I think it's healthy to be like, this is I'm exchanging purchasing power, right? Or whatever, even if you're bartering for something. I'm exchanging something of value for this material thing. Is it valuable enough to me that I want to live with it, that I want to rub it all over my body, that I want to marry it and keep it forever? I think that's a healthy question to ask. Novark saying, I'm starting all this stuff, books, vinyl, figures, guitars. I don't have room anymore to store the stuff, let alone where do I need to leave all this? Yeah, and I also think that sometimes, like, did I appreciate my 12 string this week? It's sitting just off camera right now. And like, I spent so much money on it. I loved it so much. I got it all set up. And then it's like, then it just becomes part of the background noise. So that's partially why I don't like the idea of getting hauls just to show them on screen. And I got away from doing haul videos because A, I mostly get Epic collections, but B, I didn't like the idea of getting a haul and feeling like the only value it was going to have was to be like, look, everybody, I got this haul. And then a few hundred people watch. And then like, that was why I bought all those comic books. But I do enjoy that these things act as a backdrop here. It does give me some pleasure to know that you are all seeing them, and I reference them constantly. So that just falls in the spectrum of like, find a way to practically use your thing. One of the things I always say is like the easiest way to use things is to just make them available. Like I started doing yoga more because I just put the yoga mat inside of my bed. So then when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I could just do yoga, which like it previously lived in a closet, which looked much tidier. But when I see it in the morning, I am much more likely to do yoga. So a lot of times I'm like, well, can you see your books? All the books that I have in the stacks down in the garage, I never read them because they're out of sight, out of mind, right? I think a certain amount of ADHD or neurodivergence, you have problems with object permanence and you need things to be like in front of you, invisible, in order to appreciate them and love them. And so a big part of it for me is like when I have something I want to appreciate more, whether that's books, whether that's instruments, whether it's whatever, how can I make it prominent in my life such that I continue to experience it? If I want to go with your comics, I could have one heck of a funeral pile, right? Where we could just light them all on fire at the end. Deez Marcel, I'm so sorry I never got to say hello to you earlier because I think I just started getting into the books. I take a Gillen, Jamie talking about, taking a Gillen omnibus with Immortal X-Men. Yeah, Gillen is like the one writer that I think I just follow him. And I know I'll reread him and I like having a complete shelf of his work, but even that idea that like, I want to have all the stuff by this one writer, like what does that get you? Like, are you going to reread them? I think at one point I wanted everything by Rick Remender, and then I was just accumulating it for a while. I was like, here's my Rick Remender shelf. Then I started reading it and I was like, oh, I don't like Rick Remender anymore. Now I've come all the way back around. I've done the full Charlie XCX 360 on him because I like him again. I've come back to the starting place. But like, why was I buying everything by Rick Remender, not even reading it? And then when I read it, I was like, I don't even like this that much. Kirill Steinbach saying the only concern with going digital is that you don't actually own the issues. Yeah, I know. I have been known to go through every page of the issue in Kindle and screen capture them and make my own PDF because I am a crazy person. I do that with Power Fantasy because I want my own PDF by, Kieran Gillen. It's all the same topic. I want my own PDF that I can open from anywhere, even if my computer's not on the internet, even if I don't have the Kindle app on the device. I want to put the pages in the order I want to put them. So yeah, I really do think we should get for $5 for a digital copy, we should get a DRM free copy. And I know that there's issues with piracy or whatever, but you know what, buddy? That ship has sailed. That the things are already being pirated. So it's not going to hurt anybody to let us download our goddamn comic, because there's a new digital platform coming later this year that I've seen, and I think they're doing DRM free downloads of indies. So I'm really excited. I forget what it's called, so I don't want to say it wrong, but I'm very, very excited for that. But yeah, my feeling is I'm a very kind of like mixtape culture person because of the era that I grew up in. I think once you've bought something, that is yours to do with what you want. So if I bought it on Kindle and or Comixology, I absolutely can make copies of it. I can share that single PDF with one of my friends if I want to, and you can't friggin' stop me. And I have that strong opinion because I do think that we should be able to purchase them permanently when we get them digitally. But generally, when I say read it digital, I usually mean like an all-you-can-eat service like Global Comics or Marvel Unlimited or DC Unlimited, because I hate buying these individual issues. I would prefer not to. I would pay anything for it. I would pay $100 a month for an all-you-can-eat Marvel service that had those comics of those months, and just to not have to buy each one of them, because I would pay as much as half the price of buying them all individually digitally if I could just have an all-you-can-eat version. Okay. Kevin Cork had to move house with all my books in a couple of times, and I got a lot more serious about reading digital after. These days, I only buy books I know I want to revisit every couple of years. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. So now we get into some of the comments during the stream. Colt Dog, hello to you. I forget if I said hello to you. Saying I wake up that early. I was talking about getting up at like 5 a.m. to feed Kid Krisis when she was a little baby. Just because I don't want to work in the heat. Yeah, I hear that. Although it doesn't get really hot here, but I still like waking up early, and just I love feeling like my day started before other people's days, whether it's because of hot or sunlight or whatever. It just like gives me a little shot in the arm. Okay, let's see if I missed any other stuff. I'm old enough to remember comics sold at grocery store checkouts too. Exactly. Everybody's talking about Daredevil being canceled. Everybody's talking about Doctor Strange. All right. So I think mostly you actually were saying things that had to do with the books. And so Kevin Cork saying not worrying about the chair because you can't actually hear the squeaks of the chair. All right, so now I think we are pretty much up to present. So let's see what questions you have come up with. No wrong answers. All right, here's the first one. Everybody get ready. Who's my favorite and least favorite current writer and artist? Oh, you know I have a lot of trouble with this without my database in front of me, so I'm just going to look around. I think right now I have to say Kelly Thompson because she has no duds. The only Kelly Thompson book the only times I have not liked Kelly Thompson comics is when the art just does not quite feel like it's selling her jokes. So easy answer. Least favorite writer right now. I'm very frustrated with Mark Waid. I'm not saying he's my least favorite. He's not one of these people I have like a hate boner for. I'm just saying I read Mark Waid comic books and I never can tell. He's not least favorite, but I can never tell if it's the Mark Waid who's putting in high effort or if it's the Mark Waid who's phoning it in. And he's a busy guy. He's been in the industry a long time. I have so much respect for him. But the inconsistency bugs me. I would rather pick up a comic by somebody who I know I'm going to hate their stuff and I'm just going to hate read it rather than pick up a comic that I truly don't know which version of him I'm going to get. Artist, Freed Karami at Marvel. I'm obsessed with Freed Karami. And least favorite artist, we're just going to go with this guy that we were just talking about. Ryan Otley. Okay, let's see. Who did anybody else say? Well, jump in and say there are no wrong answers. Who is your favorite and least favorite comic writer? Who's your favorite and least favorite comic artist? You do not have to justify it as much as me. There are no wrong answers. Answer that question in the chat. And if you answer it, I will check it out. After a weekend at HeroCon, AS says, and now watching Krisis on the plane ride home. Wow, you are comicked out. Also, I love seeing me in the air. That is so cool to me. So I hear, deep Krisis lore. Deep Krisis lore. In 8th grade, I had to turn in a creative writing assignment every week. And that was pre-computers. So I wrote it longhand in my grandmother's living room in the morning, usually before school, to get over the course of mornings to get it ready. And I started writing this book that was the original Krisis Team was the name of the book. And it was right before, if I have my math right, it was before Gen 13 came out, but I'd seen maybe the solicit of Gen 13. So it was like my version of what I thought Gen 13 was going to be back when it was originally solicited as Gen X. That name, Krisis, became my name, Krisis, and why I'm named Krisis. And I did eventually finish that book in 2010 for National Novel Writing Month. But in that original book, and this is the internet existed, but I'd never even seen the internet. It was like a legend to me at this point. And also, laptops was like, you had to be like a super fancy business person if you had a laptop. And I just remember the main character, who was me. I was in grade school. Of course, the main character was me. Gets on this plane and to be taken somewhere and finds this laptop under the seat. And the laptop, he opens it up and the laptop magically connects to their file system, even though they're in the airplane. So to me, you have to understand that the idea of seeing the internet on a laptop from an airplane and then me being on that internet, that is the biggest fantasy in the world fulfilled. So that is some deep lore about Krisis. Okay, let's see what some people have said. Because now you are answering. Hold on. Favorite current writer, Dan Waters, Dark Patterns. Current artist, Jamal Campbell, Zatanna. Great picks, Cruel Angel. They are both high quality for AS, Mignola, and Mignola. Super job. Favorite artist, Daniel Warren Johnson. Favorite writer, Dan Waters. A lot of Dan Waters love in the stream right now. Jamie C answers his own question. Favorite, Al Ewing. And favorite artist, Jamal Campbell. Wow. A lot of centering on Jamal Campbell right now, which I love because I don't even understand how he does what he does. It's so gorgeous. Favorite current writer and artist, Kelly Thompson, agreeing with me, and Dan Mora, colored by Tamara Bonvillain, because as we know, Lance, Tamara Bonvillain is a lot of what we love about Dan Mora's art. Brendan Riley saying, I know others really dig him, but for the life of me, I cannot stand Cody Ziegler's writing style. It makes me want to stick my head in a blender. What about your tender heart in a blender? Would you fade into a beautiful oblivion? But I get that. There are certain writers who, even though I know they're not technically bad, the way they voice things or like the tropey thing that they do, it just makes me want to like stab myself with a fork as I'm reading it. I definitely have writers like that, so I completely understand. Eric Garza saying, favorite writers, Kelly Thompson, another one, and Dennis Camp. Current favorite artist, Dan Mora, another Dan Mora, and Hayden Sherman. Clearly, we all know each other well at this point, and we have some favorites. Jamie's taking a shot at least favorites, Stephanie Phillips and John Romita Jr. No hate, of course. There are no wrong answers. Renzo N saying favorite writer Jamal Campbell, who's also a writer, not just an artist. Favorite artist Lucas Wernick. Yeah, Lucas Wernick is great. Least favorite Mark Miller, can't argue with that. Least favorite Greg Land. How dare you, sir? How dare you come onto my screen and say negative things about Greg Land? Okay, let me get a couple more. I don't know that we're gonna keep doing no wrong answers, but I did see a couple more interesting things, and so I want to try to find them, and then we will keep going. Max saying, yeah, a big tip for people who want to learn guitars. Buy a guitar stand. I have one just off camera here. I don't know if they still make these. They're called Ultimate Support. I've had this since probably 2003. It is a workhorse. It still works. I don't know who the brand is, but if they still make these, I have like 3 of them. They're so great. So great, because they really hold your, some of them have little feet to hold your guitar up, and some of them just are like hanging style, so the guitar just hangs from it. But yeah, Max is totally right. And I always say this, the best thing if you want to do guitar is you as soon as you put it in the case, that is another step you've got to do to play the guitar. It has to be nearby. And every time you think of a song that you're like, I love that song, you should just pick up the guitar and noodle that song for 2 seconds. That is how you learn how to play guitar. Okay, super job. Having now read the first 10 years of GFT, God bless you. I wish I had the time because I want to. The first few years are way worse with the fan service, and they start toning it down to the 6 or 7 year mark, not in the covers though, right? I feel like what I think is that people of a certain age remember when it first started coming out in 2006 and 2007, and they remember that they were just cheesecake comics, and then nobody kept reading them, and then nobody realized that they just turned into regular comics with cheesecakey covers after that. I really think it is a collective delusion that everybody only has ever read their comics from the first 3 or 4 years, and then by the time it kind of got just turned into normal comics by the 6 and 7 year mark, nobody knew that. I want a t-shirt now that says Dackett doesn't care. I would wear that t-shirt. I would absolutely wear that t-shirt. Min, I'm happy you're still here because I was worried that responding from your comment from like 2 hours ago, you wouldn't still be here. Screenshotting the digital copy is such a good idea. You brought it. It should be mine. Yeah, and not to like tread into dangerous territory here, but what is a pirated copy other than a screenshotted copy of a comic book? I'll put it this way. If you buy a vinyl version of a record that did not come with the download, would you feel any hesitance about going onto like Pirate Bay and downloading the MP3? There's other better music torrents, but like, would you feel you've paid for it? The artist made money. It's important to give artists money. Give artists money. But if you've given the artist money for it in one format, would you have and play all the time, and you just want the MP3 of one song to like play in your car or whatever, like, or on your jog? No wrong answers. I'm not going to put all your answers on screens. We don't want visits from the FBI to our houses. But like, is there any problem with that? Because that's the same thing I come to with screenshotting the comic book. But at the point that I'm manually putting in the effort to screenshot every page of a comic book like Power Fantasy, part of me in my mind is like, somebody already did that. That's what the pirated version is. I'm just repirating it for my own personal use. So it's really, really interesting layers of ethics there. But pay creators, pay artists. If you don't pay them, we can't have more of the stuff that they do. Next, imagine now to my question about creator completionism. To me, it boils down to the question of whether one also wants to commit themselves to being a student or even a scholar of the subject. Big agree. I think even if you're not going to love every comic book by XYZ creator, if you just are interested in the idea of having a collection of them and being a scholar of them, that's like me with Ursula Le Guin. I've only read one of her books so far, but I was like, this is powerful enough and changing my life enough that I am willing to drop the really only a couple $100 to like have a complete Ursula Le Guin library and start to become a student of her, even if I'm maybe never going to get to 100% completion on her. Anna May, hello to you. I love when you show up. Do I have interest in doing interviews with comic authors? Very much so. So look, there's only so many hours in the day, and I'm stretched taut right now. I'm stretched to the limit, especially if I want to catch up on all these pull lists. And I do, because it's, again, Crushing Crazes comes first. I can't do all this fun stuff. I can't interview creators. I can't do evergreen shows if I'm not caught up on Crushing Crisis. This week, I might only host the evergreen that's on your petition. I might not actually be one of the voters and readers, because I just cannot put that higher on the list than Crushing Crisis, and I'm behind on Crushing Crisis. I have the format I want to do interviews in. I've outlined it. I know how it would work. I actually have I have two people who volunteered for me to test it on, not creators, but just people who you might be interested in me interviewing. If I had infinite time, I would do that. If I didn't have a full-time job and I could just do comics all the time, I would do that. But I can't right now. And I don't want to do it half-assed. And also, I want to prove that my channel has pull. I was having a conversation with somebody this weekend about like, they're like, your channel does have pull. Like you have an audience that shows up every week. Your videos do get seen by 1,000 people. Like to a comic creator, that's a big deal. And I have to tell myself that all the time because I wouldn't want to go on a channel and only be seen by a few people because my day is super, super busy. And so when I look at, like, I would love to interview Kelly Thompson. I would die. I don't know if she'd want to be interviewed by me because she knows I'm a crazy super fan and I might be too much for her. But I'm like, Kelly, is it worth Kelly Thompson's time to come on this channel? Everybody who's on this channel already knows how much I love Kelly Thompson. She's not going to sell another comic book by hanging out with me. And so I definitely have that, like, it's not quite imposter syndrome, but this kind of like, am I valuable enough complex that has for a long time held me back from being interested in that. But I'm also a journalist by degree and by trade, honestly, at this point. And so I would like to interview comic authors. There's just got to be enough time. This whole poll crushing crisis system has to turn into a finely oiled machine so that I can get there. But I very, very much want to. Okay, I think we're probably done our little interlude here. I see some other people talking about some favorite artists. I'll get a couple of those. Favorite artist, Andrew. Hello, Andrew. Saying Mike Allred. I mean, hard not to say Mike Allred. Least favorite artist, Jeff Lemire. Not sure whether he still tries. Read him. Okay. And Lance McNair saying, talking to Kane. Sorry, I thought it said Crisis. I read a number of Once and Future issues years back and loved the art so much. Dan Mora, Tamara Bonvillain. A need to revisit helps that I enjoy Arthurian legend. That was kind of my problem with it. I felt like it had to come with cliff notes. Like, I didn't know Arthurian legend well enough. And I was so lost. And I'm like, Gillen, can you just give me like a page of references to be like, hey, here's the chapter of Once and Future King that I'm currently referencing here. Like, I was like, Gillen, give me something, baby. I just cannot follow it right now. So I did like Once and Future, but and it wasn't all Arthurian, right? It had like Beowulf. There was all sorts of things that it referenced, but I just felt like that was one that did so much referencing that I just needed a little bit of help of knowing what the fuck it was talking about. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm going to take a nice long sip of water. And we're going to do the back half of the alphabet. As a reminder, I'm going to get all the way to Z before I do any general comments. But if you're commenting about the books themselves, I will endeavor to get that on screen as we go. Okay? Here we go. Now we're up to King Spawn. So what I've said a lot about King Spawn, and it's interesting. I do feel like I start to repeat myself a little bit some here, but that's because I do want you to find the comic books that you like. And so sometimes if I need to like repeat what I liked about it, it's worth repeating. King Spawn is the smaller Spawn title. It's still Spawn. I don't know why it's called King Spawn. It's just another Spawn book. It could be called The Amazing Spawn. But the things he's dealing with are much, much smaller than the whole scope of Heaven and Hell. And this issue kind of really worked for me because we've dealt with the idea that he's trying to protect this one kid from a serial killer. And so in this issue, he comes sorry, these are uneven and it's driving me crazy. In this issue, he comes face to face. It's this one with the white. Oh, I guess it just wraps a little bit around the spine. It's making me crazy. Okay. Sorry, ADHD strikes again. So I gave myself 20 more seconds on the clock, like Marble Madness. Let's not get distracted. So in this issue, he comes face to face with the serial killer, and it's just some guy, but it's never just some guy in Spawn. So we actually find out the history of why this guy is killing children. Someone is killing the children, and it's actually really interesting. And Spawn, of course, has a seething hatred for this guy, but it's great because they're both playing chess. Like Spawn double crosses him, he double crosses Spawn. Spawn has a ace in the hole against him. He's got an ace in the hole against Spawn. It's just Spawn gets to be a character. One of the things that really wears me down in these comic books is when you have a lead character that you never remind us why they're cool, why they're nice, why they're funny, why we're rooting for them. I think the main Spawn title often loses why we're rooting for Spawn. Here, it's very obvious. I had a lot of fun. Written by Rory McConville, art that was fantastic by Yildiz Sinar, color from Ivan Nunes, and letters from And World Design. I think King Spawn is probably the Spawn title with the lowest barrier to entry. Yeah. Great fight here. Just really cool. Love the colors. I just love how saturated Spawn is, but then like the points that he takes to like show the distress. Like clearly Sinar's art shows the cracks and stuff in his gauntlets and things, which I just on its own like. But then I also love the way that the color like leans into that and accentuates that they're textured and they're worn. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. We all know that I love Lady Death, but as we have established, the current Lady Death comics are more about boobs than they are about story, and that is fine, and I do not judge you if you're into that, but I want to read Lady Death that has boobs and also a compelling story. Maybe these got better. They were never terrible, but they just were like not giving me the full fantasy that I was looking for. I did read Marvel Meow. I don't know that we need this. This comic takes it takes 20 seconds to read it, but this kind of has a story for a change, which is that there's Agatha Harkness's cat needs help, but the help can only be provided by the cats of other heroes. Again, I will point out the thing I always point out. This artist, Nail Fuji, they draw the heroes so well that I think it's kind of wild that they haven't like snapped them up to do a full-time comic book like Runaways or something, because they draw the cats beautifully, but they draw the heroes just sumptuously, and they're doing all of their own art and colors, and if the credits are to be believed, I think they're also doing their own letters too, but yeah, it always looks great. Then there's this Marvel Rivals comic, which this is the end of an arc by Paul Allor, and I have to say, this was a wild success. This is mostly denouement. It's funny because it gets very toyetic, or video game-etic, in that we think that somebody's died, but clearly in Marvel Rivals you can respawn, and so it shows the respawn happen, which is funny because it's also happening on Krakoa, which like has its own respawn quality to it. So it's kind of like a comment and a comment. But then we also see the fight. Like I like that this makes me want to go play this video game. And we get a little bit of an end scene with Emma Frost and Captain America coming to a resolution about their fight over like, should mutants have sovereignty over the data that represents their genetic heritage on Krakoa. I think Paul Allor did a fantastic job here. Paul Allor often gets a lot of smaller comic jobs. They write for a lot of kind of side series and annuals and things. The last full-length series I read for them was their G.I. Joe series back in like 2018 or 2019, and it was mind-blowing. It was so good. I just wish somebody would give Paul Allor like a IP to sit on for 5 or 6 issues to do something with, and I'm very happy they're on Marvel Rivals, but I just want to see more. I think they're really reliable. I have read their creator-owned stuff. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I really think they have a talent for IP though, and I just wish somebody would give them something more than single issues. By the way, art Iguera, colors by D. Cuniff, letters by Joe Sabino. Okay, Miles Morales, Spider-Man. We've established I really like Cody Ziglar. And the thing that I love about Cody Ziglar here is that he's keeping up Miles's story and Miles's tone and Miles's cast, but he's also doing this gods thing. And I think often when you slur together these two different kind of things, you're doing Miles and you're doing gods, you're doing Thundercats, but you're also doing horror. Anytime you mix these two genres, sometimes there's really the risk that they just don't mash up that well. But I feel like Ziglar is writing both of the halves of this so well, the gods half and the Spider-Man half, and it's making it charming because we're getting the fun of seeing Miles out of his element here, and none of it feels like fake or wrong. Like no part of it feels like, oh, now you're doing more of this God stuff, which often happens when you kind of mash up two different concepts or two different franchises. It just never occurs here. I think Marco Renna is doing an excellent job on the art. Really great colors from Brian Valenza, which is a sentence I find myself saying a lot every week right now, and letters from Corey Petit. And I just thought that this whole concept is fun, that Miles is so stressed out and they're like, what people do you want to bring to the Gods tournament? And he's like, okay, breathe, don't get stressed. We've been to therapy. And so he thinks of his therapist, which I am here for that. I think that is the best turn of plot I've read in a comic book in so long, that under duress that this hero is like, I don't know what to do. And it's like in Ghostbusters where when the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man arrives and they're like, nobody think of anything. It's going to take the form of the thing you think of. And then I forget which one of them goes, I've got bad news. Like I was thinking of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I tried to clear my head, but the commercial popped in my head. And so then, it's in the form of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It's that same thing. It's that like intrusive thoughts alert, and the intrusive thought of Miles being like, I'm really sorry. I thought about my therapist. I was just trying to calm myself. And so it's not the whole issue. There's so much more to it, but that to me just made me love this. Yeah, I think this is extraordinary. And the thing that I also love about it is Ziglar is building on a brick that he's already built. You can pick this up, no prep, and it'll make sense to you. But this has references to every arc that came before it. I'm going to make a bold statement here. Logan Wayne giving me the intel that I have forgotten, that is Ray who thought of the Marshmallow Man. The thing I'm going to say here, bold statement. Cody Ziglar, everybody at Marvel and DC, is the only person who is doing Claremontian comics right now, in that his comics are soap opera, and that every story kind of feels like its own individual thing, but each one of them fully acknowledges everything that happened before. I think Ziegler is one of the only people doing that right now, and I am loving it. Okay, let's continue. I dropped mine as a long and lonesome grave because I couldn't figure out what genre it was. Talking about genre mashups that don't know what they're doing. Is it a gun book? Is it a magic book? Is it a revenge book? It didn't seem to know, and so I got bored. I do not read Money Shot from Vault Comics, which are about a group of scientists who are trying to fund their science via pornography, which honestly is a thing that a lot of scientists in America might be thinking about right now because of all the grants that have been canceled. However, I did read Zenescope, Myths, and Monsters, and y'all prepare to linger with me about this bullshit comic book that none of you have read because I friggin' loved it. So Zenescope has two universes. They have their Grimm Fairy Tales universe, and then they have this new universe that is, I can't explain it, but it's a superhero universe, but it's a superhero universe that is partly also playing with things that are in public domain. And so it's playing with superhero concepts that are similar to Marvel and DC superhero comics, but then also that bear with the guns, that's Winnie the Pooh. That's right, it's Pooh Bear, because Pooh Bear is in public domain at this point. So it kind of feels like they're steering towards maybe it's going to be the end of the Grimm Fairy Tales universe. So I kind of think it's interesting, like, oh, is this going to be their new ongoing universe and they're going to put Grimm Fairy Tales to bed? Maybe. I don't know. It's unknown. So what this is it's a one-shot that just highlights all three of these character groups that they've invented. Man, Goat, and the Bunny Man, which is like a super silly kind of like Deadpool ambush bug sort of toned book. Fury Hellfang, which is like a very serious book that's very kind of like Captain America Unfrozen from the Ice from the 19... It's going to be like a borderline body horror book, but also kind of X-Files-y, which I'm totally into. So I got clips from every one of them because I want to talk about them. And I've read all these individually, except for the Pooh one. And I've liked them all individually too. So the Man Goat and the Bunny Man one, which is by Joe Brusha, story and writing with art from Jordi Tarragona and colors from Walter Pereira. They basically go into the sewers because these kids are being kidnapped by goblins, but then they find the Goblin Queen. And I don't know how Zenescope got away from this, or if the lawyers are going to be calling, but they straight up do Madeline Pryor as the Goblin Queen. I guess like they're not calling her Madeline Pryor, but they call her the Goblin Queen, and she's clearly dressed up like Madeline Pryor. So I mean, they are really tempting fate here because that is not public domain, but it's just like a fun adventure. And I love Goat Man. Like, he's a goat who's a man and he has guns. Like, it's inherently silly. And his rabbit guy, he's like kind of like a Spider-Ham character that's just silly and goofy, but then he gets like Wolverine rage and he turns into like a murder buddy, and he's like, oh, I don't know what came over me. To me, that's the right amount of funny. Like, I don't want to read a comic book that just all gags if you're doing superhero action. I think if you're going to be a funny book like Fire and Ice, that's fine. But if you're going to just do like superhero, there's only so much humor you can put into it. I need the heroes to hero, and this to me balanced it. Okay, so then the second one, there was this whole series that I reviewed, I think all the issues from Fury and I forget the other guy's name, Terror and Fury, and it was mostly about the guy Terror, who was kind of like a Punisher type character, revived from World War II in the modern day. But I was like, why aren't we focusing on Fury? Well, this is Fury's origin story, that she also died in World War II fighting Nazis who were also like into the supernatural and vampires, and she's also been unfrozen in the modern day. So she's kind of like sort of like Tigra or Catwoman, but also like with guns, like as a member of the Invaders, and it really, really works for me. This one's written by also by Joe Brusha, art by Alessandro Uzzezzo, and colors by Grosticia. But the thing I really loved is it turns out the vampire guy she was fighting comes back to the modern day too, and she doesn't know it yet. And this character design, I don't even know. I mean, there's a lot going on here, but I just was staring at this page. The huge Joker mouth, the eyes that are smoking. I love eyes that smoke. The giant epaulets, but just over like the bare chest covered in blood. His skin's kind of blue. He's got this like gladiator belt and then these huge thighs. I just thought something about the way that this was drawn and colored was really, really good. And then this final one, so Pooh on the Rocks. This was written by Noah Mitchell with art from Jordi Perez and colors by Max Flan Araggio. This art reminds me of Godlewski, who he drew Copperhead, and then he drew some stuff. He drew some Bendis Superman. This very much looks like his art style, but also there's like a little tiny hint of Alred in this art style too. If you look at the woman and her face, so basically this woman's code name is Piglet, and she's a U.S. special operative, and she is recruited Pooh Bear, a genetically modified super soldier, to be her special investigator. And so she's having him investigate other things, but he wants to find all his own old friends, which are all of the various Pooh friends. And so he goes to find them, but they're in this like Weapon X lab and they're being experimented on. So it's kind of like X-Files-y, but it's kind of Weapon X, but it's also Winnie the Pooh. Like, I love it. I love it. F me up. I'm so into it. So this was just one issue. I think it was $5 or $6. I can't say that it's the best comic I've already read, but as a sampler platter, as a tapas plate of what's going on in this Myths and Monsters sub-universe, you know what? I like this universe way better than I like Ghost Machine. Like, to me, this is so much more interesting than that. And I just had fun. Like, I'm ready for the full series of all three of these. I know I sound like I'm like sponsored by Zenescope or something. I am from Philadelphia, so I do think I'm like rooting for them a little bit because they're from Philadelphia too. But this was just great. It was fun. Superheroes should be fun. You can't forget the fun part. Okay, let's continue. That was 18 minutes on Zenescope. One World Under Doom. Now, if we recall, I have hated the past two issues of this with an unholy vengeance because Ryan North seems to be deliberately writing every Marvel character as out of character as he possibly can write them. Maybe it's going to come back around and make sense later. I don't know. But in this issue, the whole point is none of the Marvel characters are there. It is just a Doom versus Dormammu throwdown. So we see all the Marvel characters disappear in this spectacular page of R.B. Silva art with colors by David Curiel, one of my favorite colorists at Marvel, letters by Travis Lanham. And then it is just a full issue of Doom and Dormammu throwing down. It is so sumptuous. R.B. Silva is the perfect artist to draw Doom because he can draw action and technology, but what he draws best is characters just looking stately, which Doom always should. And I love that Dormammu has more power here, but we see Doom's intelligence, right? It's no fun if Doom just always wins, just like any other character, just like Batman. You got to see why he wins. Why is Doom Doom? And here we really get it, but we also get some really fun moments. He decides that he's going to cast spells, basically his superhero powers, because he's low on magic and he's got to make it quick and direct. And so he does Snicked as a spell, and then he stabs Dormammu, which has an extra fun to it because this is absolutely Silva like referencing the art that he does of Wolverine stabbing Moira McTaggart in Powers of X. I mean, it's not that exact setup, but like we've seen Silva do this panel before. I just love this. This is what I want from One World Under Doom. I don't know why North seems to be having so many problems with writing all of the characters in the Marvel Universe, but like this throwdown of Doom versus Dormammu and also just the way he wrote Doom here totally worked for me. The art was gorgeous. I absolutely loved this. It was almost my pick of the week, but I just think the art in Doctor Strange of Asgard was a little bit stronger. I read the first issue of this past time about serial killers and baseball. Again, not everything mashes things up really well, and I'm not a baseball person. I just didn't get the fantasy from the first issue. It didn't seem like something I needed to know more about. However, again, because you demanded it, not really. I read all 12 issues of Jeff Lemire, Gabriel H. Volta, and Jordi Belair's Phantom Road. It's lettered by Steve Wands. Because I was reading the solicits to write one of my image posts, and it kind of sounded a little X-Files-y, and you can always get me with something that's X-Files-y. So I read all 12 issues between last night and this morning. They are quick reads. I don't know if this is on Global Comics, but please do not go out and pay for these issues one by one, because I'm telling you, each one of these issues, some of them took me only 2 minutes to read. There's not a lot of script, and the way that they're paneled and set up, they just fly by. So, Phantom Road. So this trucker, big rig trucker, gets in an accident, and the accident, it's unclear if the other car was already flipped over or not, but he picks up the woman that survives the accident, and they find this strange artifact in the road. And it turns out every time they interact with this artifact, or they go to sleep, or they visit this certain truck stop, this certain brand of truck stop, they get taken into this other world that's kind of this like phantom zone or B universe or kind of like ghostly world. And in this world, there's just all these brainless zombies all around marching towards them endlessly. And they can't figure out why they're getting shunted onto this world, or if there's something special about them or special about the artifact. And at the same time, there's an FBI agent who is investigating a string of murders that maybe have something to do with that. It is very, very satisfying from the X-Files perspective. And the thing I will say is this, by the way, it is on Global Comics. They don't put it issue by issue, but the whole volumes are on Global Comics, and it is available in the all you can eat for Global Comics. So for the price that you pay for one volume, you could just subscribe to Global Comics. The thing I love about it is the FBI part of this, I am so into it. It's very similar to Department of Truth, but like really, really reduced down in a way that you can easily follow. Department of Truth really is quite serpentine. I love the FBI story. The agent, was her dad somehow involved with this? Wasn't he just an insurance salesman? Is she losing time? Has she been involved in this weird phantom zone as well in the past? She doesn't remember it, but something's weirdly familiar about it. Why is this guy in a Hawaiian shirt always, nipping at her heels? Who is he? Why does he wear a Hawaiian shirt? That part of this book is so much more interesting to me than the Phantom Road part of the book, which sometimes can just feel like it's Lemire wasting time. Like, there are definitely issues where it's like, the whole issue is like, we're on the Phantom Road, there's a weird zombie thing, drive past it, should we? I don't know, okay, let's, sure. And that was the issue. Like, that's why they only took 2 minutes to read sometimes. Sometimes the issue is just a conversation about a zombie on the side of the road, and that is the whole issue. But the reason it's working for me is because this FBI plot is so much more interesting and so much more textured. And the mystery is very, very cool. Why are these murders only happening on this one highway? Why do this certain kind of rust stop always the thing that opens this other world? It's definitely got shades. It almost reminded me of Severance for a second. Like, it's really cool. Quick read. Not my favorite comic book, but Jeff Lemire has hooked me. And I think Walt's art is just incredible. Okay. Please let me know if you can still hear me and see me. I'm not begging for engagement. I just haven't seen a comment for a while. So I just want to make sure I'm not broadcasting into the ether. And I just love his range. Like, he does people, and I think people often think that all he does is people, but like, he can do helicopters, he can do trucks, he can do chases, he can do action. I just think people don't often give him enough credit. And here's them. So they're in this truck stop and they look out the window and all of a sudden they see the other place, the phantom world. They're like, why can we see through to this other side right now? Very, very interesting. Really, really dig it. Now we come to Phoenix. Guess what? This issue of Phoenix was pretty good. It's written by Stephanie Phillips. It's art from Roy Mercado. It's colors by Java Tartaglia. It's letters by Corey Petit. Let's talk about why it's good. A couple of episodes ago, maybe last episode, I was yelling because we got Phoenix's inner monologue in the Gwen Spider-Gwen book. And I was like, why can't Stephanie Phillips do it in her own book? And somebody mentioned in the comments, oh, they have been doing that in Phoenix for the last 2 issues. Well, here I am. I loved this because it had Jean in it. There was no supporting cast that we kept cutting away to, and we got Jean's actual narration, both in her communicating psychically with Cyclops and on her own. That's what's been missing from this whole comic book. Let us be close to your main character, Stephanie Phillips. And then the other thing is this new Jean costume was so... Cable was there too. This new Jean costume was so bad, as drawn by the other art team. David Curl, I think, was coloring it, but he just seemed like he gave up, and the like texture on the costume was all these little dashes. Like, he just at the last second was like, and just went with his pen and filled in a bunch of white dashes. Here, colored by Java Tartaglia, it's like this whole galaxy of little glimmering gold stars. So all of this, I don't think this artist is amazing. Roy Mercado, this is not really giving me Marvel quality. This is giving me book that's on the cancellation line that we had to lower the budget for, honestly, because I'm not saying that he's a bad artist, and actually he drew Cable pretty well. I don't know that he draws women particularly well. They're not that every woman needs to look lovely on a comic book panel, but I just don't know that he's really gotten down drawing the female form as well as he is drawing the male form. A big square dude like Cable, he nailed it. Great Cable artist. Should have been drawing that Cable series instead of Mike Henderson. Don't know if he's got the women, but the plot here of Jean's sister maybe still being alive, I do not know if I give a shit. I don't know if I care. I don't know if I want it to be real. But this is the first time in 11 issues that I felt like I actually, or 12 issues, 13 issues, what issue is this? 11 issues that I felt like I actually spent time with Jean Grey. That's all I want. I'm a Jean Grey super fan. Just let me hang out with my favorite character. So, tentatively, I think this was good. It was good. I'm willing to say that it was good. Good job, Stephanie Phillips. And you know what? These are conscious decisions. And maybe the thing that makes me sad or angry is that we had finally, we had Jean Grey throwing down against Thanos. That's the kind of thing that Chris Claremont like dreamed that Jean Grey would be used for. That's why he made her the Phoenix, to be a cosmic level power. And it just pains me that I'm never going to get to recommend that comic because it was terrible. Like, it was bad coloring, it was bad art, it was bad writing, it was so bad, and nothing interesting happened, and she never actually really fought Thanos. It hurts me deep in my soul that I'm for the rest of my life, people are going to be like, oh, I saw that Jean fought Thanos. I'm like, don't read it. So at least here, it feels like this is a plot that could go somewhere, and also it feels like Jean is herself and a character that I know and love within this plot. Okay, let's continue. Red Hulk, this was really good. This was really, really good. Benjamin Percy, G.F. Shaw, colors from Brian Valenza, does great colors, and Corey Petit on letters. So here's the thing. This Red Hulk series, it's been a little bit of a slow burn because he's not the Hulk right now, because Doom stripped him of all of his irradiation. So he's just wandering around in the middle of Latveria with Machine Man and a Deathlock. But he has a plan, and I do think that Benjamin Percy is edging us a little bit, in that he's kind of being like, you're going to get Red Hulk. There's going to be Red Hulk soon. Here's one panel of Red Hulk, but he doesn't have enough energy for it. And I do think in a comic book named Red Hulk, with Red Hulk just having been in a movie, you do have to get some more Red Hulk into your comic. But I do think that he very, very deftly handled this issue where we have this head fake where we think that Thunderbolt Ross is going to find this nuclear power plant, but instead he finds the information about what's happened to the world, because the world right now is one world under doom. He didn't know that because he was imprisoned, and he's enraged by that. Not enraged enough to turn into the Hulk, but enraged enough to be like, okay, we've got to get smarter. We've got to use better tactics. If I'm the only hero left in the world that can take down Doom, you better believe we're going to friggin' take him down. Totally in keeping with this character. Really, really good characterization. G.F. Shaw is drawing the ever-living hell out of this comic book. I don't know if I've ever seen his art quite look like this. And by the time, I mean, this is, what a great page. Just like the Deathlock in solo, the silhouette with this fierce face, and you got to give some credit from Brian Valenza on the coloring choices too, to knock back the colors in this so that he's backlit by the gunfire in the background from Thunderbolt Ross. And at the end, he finally does get powered up to be Red Hulk, so I'm so excited to see what happens next issue, which I know is already out. I just not have read it yet, but yeah, I'm just really, really enjoying this book. Benjamin Percy, maybe he should just get away from the Wolverines and the Ghost Riders. I don't know if they are his true calling. I don't read Red Sonja versus the Army of Darkness. I don't read The Sickness because I don't generally enjoy Lonnie Nadler's writing, but the solicits do sound very interesting. I'm tempted to read the first volume and see what that, because I always give somebody another chance, even somebody who I've confirmed that I don't usually like their writing. You never know when they're going to turn it around. So I might read this when the next chapter comes out. I dropped Silverhawks. I think if you have somebody like me who loves Silverhawks as much as I do, and you could not hook me in 3 issues, you have failed in your mission. I'm so sorry, Ed Brazon. I didn't keep reading Sister Imperator. The first issue was fine, but when it said the world from the world of Ghost, I thought they meant the comic book Ghost, Dark Horse, but apparently it is a band. I don't read Space Ghost. I do read Spawn, though, because I'm always on my Spawn bullshit. Let's talk about Spawn. So this is Spawn number 364, and my big complaint about Spawn... Oh, I don't want to show that yet. My big complaint about Spawn is often in the main book, the battle is so big, you cannot tell what Spawn is fighting against or for or anything. Well, this time you can, because we've just established that the gates of hell have been opened up. Everybody has their powers back, but that means all of the extraterrestrial, and I don't mean like E.T., I mean like heaven and hell and the green, all the extraterrestrial forces can now make their feelings affected on Earth again. And what we get is this great, it's like a primer. It's a good jumping on point. It's a orientation issue. And so we do a couple of pages in heaven and then in the green and in hell. And in each of those sequences, Brett Booth gets to draw the deity of those spaces. So this is Brett Booth drawing God. It took my breath away. Inked by Adelso Corona, colors from Robert Nugent, letters as always by Tom Orzechowski. God. Draw God. I mean, what an assignment. Then he draws Gaia, Mother of Nature, in her throne in the green. I love how she's like grown into the throne. And then also, although there's a lettering goof in the digital version of this, then we get Nyx, who we know is the Queen of Hell, and of course she's almost like Spawn to the max, sitting in this giant like toothy throne. Brett Booth just went off on the art in this issue. Really, really cool. Plot did still happen. We see that Spawn is basically like, oh, I can't go it alone. I've got to accept the help of some other Spawns, but also some other people in the world, heroes in the world that have been generated in the past of Todd McFarlane's entertainment imprint that are brought back here because I need to have a big stand against this evil that's appearing now that the gates to Earth have been opened again. And that to me, like, is character growth. Like, that's Spawn being like, I am a loner, but sometimes things are too big for me. So this had everything I like about Spawn. It had heaven and hell stuff. It had great art. And it showed Spawn actually like being a character and not just being this flawless tactician who is an asshole to everybody. So absolutely loved this issue. so much and really am always on my Spawn bullshit. Oh, and then I wanted to get a page that wasn't just a pinup. This is one of the other heroes who is from Todd McFarlane's universe kind of flying into frame. So this really is kind of like an everybody on board mega event sort of arc, but it just, the whole thing looked really damn good and it really, really moved. And it felt like there was an editor. Like Thomas Healy was on his job this month because I did not really detect any weirdness in the Todd McFarlane script at all. Okay. This comic was so bad. I just think I might have to talk about this generally because this issue itself enrages me so much. Greg Weisman wrote such a great #1 for Spectacular Spider-Man. And then even a decent #2. And then 13 issues of pure garbage. How this made it to 15 issues, I will never know. The idea that you can have a Peter and Miles book. There should always be a Peters and Miles book. The idea that there isn't going to be a Peters and Miles book next month because this book failed so hard is utterly atrocious. Why? Why in a world where you have Spider-Verse as a movie and you have Miles as a character and you have Peter as a character, can you not sustain a team book with the two of them? And the reason we're not going to have it is because Greg Weisman shit the bed for so many months in a row that this book was just a mattress full of feces for a whole year, okay? I don't know how to explain it to you because guess what? This whole book was about this new hero, Elementary. He didn't even seem to want to write about Peter and Miles anymore. And do you know what this final issue is? It's all of these heroes showing up from every corner of the Marvel Universe, drawn very well by Andres Genolet, to find Elementary who's missing. And then they finally find her and she's like, yeah, man, it was kind of heavy for me, so I took a break. That was the whole issue. It was just cameos from every possible hero in the universe. Could you have taken this issue to give us one significant moment between Peter and Miles? You could have if you were a competent writer, Greg Weisman. Just inventing gargoyles is not enough for me. You've got to actually turn in good comic books, and I hate you right now because you ruined this brand, this idea of Peter and Miles together. You ruined it because you made people think that all they're going to get is a mattress full of shit every time they buy a comic book that has them together because your writing was so terrible. So this wastes a whole issue of all of these people making one panel guest appearances for no reason. He goes deep. It's not even just the characters that appeared in the series. It's Wave. It's Mia Damara, the Sorcerer's Apprentice. He just plays this game of showing all these cameos, and then they find Elementary, and she's like, I'm cool. I just needed a moment to myself. Fuck this comic book, and fuck you, Greg Weisman. This is what this whole comic book should have been about. Okay. So I'm sure you're a nice person, Greg. I mean, it's not personal. None of it's never personal. But in terms of this comic book, fuck you. Okay. Now this is the Spider Team book that I was actually asking for. And you know, I don't care. I don't care about the Web of Life. I don't care about the Venomverse. I don't care. And I don't particularly care for Kyle Higgins' writing, but I'm learning that I really like Matt Groom's writing, and they're co-writing it together. And it's drawn by Luciano Vecchio, who I love, colored by Rachel Rosenberg, letters by Travis Lanham. So like there is good here. So here's the thing that this does well that no other book seems to be doing. It gives us a great scene of Peter and Miles. Vecchio, who I don't know if I've ever seen him draw actual Peter for that many panels, he draws the ever-living I keep saying ever-living, like the Hulk, right? The blue-eyed, ever-loving thing, Hulk, whatever. Anyway, this is amazing, spectacular even. It's his Spider-Man is so good. His Miles is so good. Yes. Get him on Amazing Spider-Man right now. So it gives us a great scene with Peter and Miles, and then all of the spiders and venoms that we've met in the lead up one-shots to this get abducted into this cosmic game that the forces that control the Venomverse and the Web of Life are playing. Now, do I care about that game? No. Do I care about the forces that control it? No. Do I care about any of these characters? Really? I do like Spider-Ham, and I do like the Cyclops Weapon X Spider-Man. Otherwise, no. And what's really funny is they can't even use the main Venom because the main Venom is not Eddie Brock right now. It would have been genius if they did use the Venom right now, because to have that come to a head here in this series rather than now series would have been great, but I get that it's off limits. But basically it's like a Hunger Games, it's a tournament, it's a battle royale, whatever. But it's interesting because some of the Venoms and some of the spiders know that they shouldn't actually be against each other and that they're being pitted against each other for the wrong reasons here. But some of them are like, no, we've got to protect the Web of Life, or we've got to protect the Venomverse. So it's got those layers. It's got layers of like everybody's trying to do good, but their version of what good is different for good reasons. It kept me really hooked. The art was incredible, and I like a Spider-Man team-up book, so I think I'm actually pretty excited for more of this. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the art. I actually had way more pages. Vecchio does his occasion. He draws things very bubbly, like Trad Moore sometimes. And I think he chose his battles. Like this lady spider person, he draws her. I mean, she's got this like anal beads hair. Like he definitely draws her in his very bubble way. But then he doesn't try to make everybody look like that. And then Spider-Man's muscles are a little bit like that here. But then this earlier Spider-Man is this very fluid, lithe Spider-Man. So I think it really, really works. I was impressed. That art impressed the hell out of me. I don't read Star Trek: The Lower Decks. I don't. Oh, okay. We've got it. So here we go. Let's have a conversation about your friend and mine, Mark Guggenheim, who finally, I thought I was going to let out of the doghouse because the first 2 issues of Star Wars Jedi Knights were so good. Here we are at issue 3. And the artist, Matvey Musabekov, is just a revelation, colored here by Luis Guerrero, letters by Clayton Cowles. You can tell that I'm buttering you up for a reason here. 4 reasons that escape my knowledge. Mark Guggenheim decides to tell the story of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan crash landing on this planet entirely in splash pages. 22 single splash pages without a single panel. And to be fair, if you've got Matvey Musabekov, maybe the thinking is like, wow, this guy is like a cover quality artist doing interior work. What if we just did 22 covers, right? And I get that to a degree. But the thing is, there was no story. Like at the point that you can only tell one cover style pinup per page, there's only so far you can get. And so it's very simplistic. Basically, they crash to the ground, they find the spaceship, and they leave. You can't do more because everything is just a pinup. I just think that if they just taken the approach instead of like, okay, we're going to do a Brian Hitch inspired widescreen comics thing, and we're only going to do page wide panels, right? We're going to do 2 up on a page or 3 up on a page, but they're all going to be wide panels. And sometimes we'll intersperse some splash pages. This could have told the same story with like more cadences, more beats inside of it, and it would have been more satisfying. It really doesn't take longer to read than to look at 22 covers. And that's because the script is kind of like, it doesn't even matter because you're just looking at pinups. And again, Matvey Musabekov is so good at his job and such a great artist that it works. And I'm sure that's why Mark Guggenheim decided to do it. There are probably very few other artists in this whole stream that you could have pulled this concept off with that could have delivered at this level. But it just seems like, okay, like it feels like very one-trick pony. It's like, oh, here's the special thing. You pull my finger and I fart. Like, it's this one thing that this artist can do and do so great. And Guggenheim, his instincts are so bad that he's like, oh, we're going to do that. When instead, he kind of like halted the momentum of his amazing title. And it's just too soon in a brand new title with a big cast of all these Jedi to like pull this nonsense. This is like an issue 6 or an issue 8 or an issue 11 kind of nonsense. Issue 3 is like people are still deciding if they're going to drop the title or not. And I just don't know why you would go for that here. So it was beautiful, but disappointing. Next, we come to Supergirl. Supergirl, this is really interesting. Not only is it an all-ladies team, writer and artist Tamara Bonvillain, it is artist, sorry, the credits are so small. Hold on, let's pause. Even with my glasses on, they're just very, very small on this page. DC's credits have been very small this week. Okay, let's try that again. It is Sophie Campbell writing and drawing. Tamara Bonvillain colorist, Becca Carey lettering, and then I believe even the editing team is women, Jillian Grant and Brittany Holzer. Where is this energy for Wonder Woman, DC? Why can't I get an all-ladies Wonder Woman creative team? But then on top of that, something very, very cool, the top line creative team of Tamara Bonvillain and Sophie Campbell are both trans. So cool to have an all trans art team headlining an iconic female character who is about to be the lead in her own movie. Like, it shows that DC, that their commitment to diversity in front of the scenes and behind the scenes is not just like, okay, here's our trans character, so let's throw some trans creators on it. Like, no, they're doing Supergirl. That's so cool. Now we know that Sophie Campbell, as a writer, writes some very small ball kind of plots. It's very cozy, very coffee house vibes. So I was very interested to see what she was going to do with Supergirl, and if it was going to be too low-key. No, I think it was perfect. I think it struck the perfect tone. First of all, it is super reverent to Supergirl's history and continuity. There are so many references to her family, her supporting characters, past adventures, her relationship with the city of Kandor. Like, I was like, damn, I really felt like I missed out. Not in a bad way, like I couldn't keep up with it, but I was like, Sophie Campbell's like making me feel like an asshole for not knowing my Supergirl continuity well enough. And I like that it didn't just immediately go to the small. It had big action beats. It had her using her powers. So it like understands who the character is, but then it takes it small by having her go back to her hometown, which isn't Smallville. And in her hometown, she finds out that they're starting to market Supergirl, except for it seems like a much more voluptuous Supergirl than her that she's seeing being marketed there. It doesn't even seem like her as Supergirl at all. And so she finds out there's another Supergirl. Now, this whole mistaken identity, there's two of me, somebody's impersonating me thing, it's only going to get you so far. And if this whole thing is like a whole 6-issue arc of that, I am going to be tearing my luscious hair out by the end of it. But this was illustrated and colored so beautifully. Becca Carey is my favorite letterer right now. It's so easy to read. It wasn't like laugh out loud funny like Fire and Ice. It was just amusing, and it felt warm and cozy, which is what Sophie Campbell does well. So I'm just hoping that she keeps the plot moving. I know sometimes things get a little stagnant with her, but this was a very good indicator that this could be a very good series. Jamie C47 saying, I love this so much, the Silver Age feel, and I loved having thought bubbles. Yes, I always love thought bubbles in a comic. Super Job saying, I really like Sophie Campbell's Turtles comics, but not as a turtle comic, if that makes sense. No, that's exactly what I mean. They were all really made well, but they were not what I wanted from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were like, if that was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles B series, I would have been like talking about how great it was every month, but the fact that that was the main Turtles book, it just never worked for me. Okay. This was some kind of promotional comic. It was by Milkbone, the Dog Biscuits, Superman, A Friendship Unleashed, of him hanging out with a great cover. Great cover. But I think it must be in the movie continuity, because that's the movie costume, right? That's the S of the movie costume. Also, notably, Red Supergirl says, next about not, according to Gunn, to be as much of a pillar of the new transmedia DCU as the Trinity. And transmedia here means across all media, not transgender media. Although that comic book was some transgender media, and I loved it. Okay, let's continue. Jokes. We got jokes. Okay. Now we come to The Surgeon, which is on Global Comics, and I've been reading as the individual issues come out in print, although all of it's already up on Global Comics. This issue, I struggled with it. So part of why I love this book is the art is always so good. Like it even though it's an indie book, this creative team really can bring it. It's been a few different colors and colorists. Omar Zaldivar here and Hedwin Zaldivar, I guess they're related on colors. Really, really good. A high quality book that looked good, but it's just trying to do a little bit too much. This is very Walking Dead, right? But it's Walking Dead from the perspective of the transient person, the person who's just rolling into their town for a day and then rolling out. We're watching the world of Walking Dead, sort of. There's not zombies, but it's post-apocalyptic, and the world is terrible through her vision. And so I like that, but this just tries to do so much with her so quickly, and it cuts away from her too much to show the village that she's abandoning, to show the other side, the opposing side. And I'm not saying I don't want that character development, and I think it's actually extraordinarily well written by John Pence. It just felt like, for a book that really hooked me by having such an indelible idea of who this character is, she kind of got reduced to being a supporting, reacting character in this comic book in a way that kind of bugged me. And also, she was like so interesting and tough and cool at the beginning, and now she's kind of just feeling like everybody's nursemaid and the person that people are like beating up. And I'm not saying that no female character can ever get beaten up and ever help other people, but it just feels like the intense amount of agency that she had in the first issue has kind of been eroded, and she's kind of just reacting to things. And honestly, I had a lot of trouble understanding what it was she was trying to accomplish in this issue. Like, she's been very driven by healing people, driven by defending a town. Here she finds out that there's a child slave trade, and she I just don't understand what her motivation was. So it wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was right in the middle, but I do think it is a very high quality book. If you told me this was from like Top Cow, would not surprise me. This art from Omar Zaldivar definitely feels like something that like a Mark Silvestri brand would put into their comic book. Next, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Nation, which is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles anthology book. I did not like the A story here. The A story was a Bebop and Rocksteady in Las Vegas story written by Caleb Gollner from art, and two sets of art that really didn't go together from Omar Francia and Nelson Daniel. I just didn't like it. This is a great example of it couldn't sell the comedy. Like, these are two inherently funny characters. Every time they're on panel, they're doing something funny, but the gags just didn't really land for me. So I kind of was like rolling my eyes. I'm like, oh, How the Mighty Have Fallen. Do you remember when this was almost in my top 12? It was because the first 4 issues told a specific continuing story. 2 stories, actually, the front matter and the back matter. And both stories are really good. And like, I don't want to read this book for these like gag-a-minute stories. I want to read something substantial from the Turtle universe. But then I got to this B story. This B story with Lita, who was a mutant, but apparently at the very end of that Sophie Campbell run in issue 149, as I was informed by a caption here, got turned back into a human. And so she's the one mutant who's ever been turned back into a human, but now she's been shipped off to live with April O'Neil's parents, and she just wants to, it's like not her people. She's like, I'm still a mutant at heart, even though I look like a human because I've had the mutant experience already. And so she tracks down the one other mutant who lives in this small town, and it turns out he has a connection back to New York and back to the Turtles. And so it's kind of about her coming to terms with what it means to be human again. It was beautiful. I mean, I'm never surprised to read a good story by Dave Wylgosh. I don't know how to say his name, but he's an outstanding writer. Used to be an editor. But the art here from Vitor Kafagi and letters by Russ Wooten, so good. Like this art, so great. I can't believe it's from an artist who's coloring themselves, and it's just all so beautifully told. It fits into that same world as Sophie Campbell, where like everything is cute, but it's different than Sophie Campbell. It's the love the big hair, love the texture and the colors. This story was extraordinary. Honestly, that first story could have been total garbage. It was only like medium garbage, not total garbage. But this backup story absolutely was worth the price of admission for me. Nothing was worth the price of having to endure this comic book. Thunderbolt's Doomstrike. I don't understand why it exists. Like, they're burning it off on a weekly schedule. For why? For what reason? Just to set up whatever the status quo Bucky is going to have for this new Avengers book that you probably all read the #1 of that I haven't read yet. It's so bad. It's so bad. It is any goodwill that I had left for Jackson Lansing and Colin Cully that I was like using to defend them from Max Appleman, who hates them. I've run out because it's so bad. It has this dinner with Doom and Bucky, but neither of them say anything interesting. Like, sometimes you can get away with these monologue-y scenes and it can work, but if you don't have a good grasp of the characters and you're doing a monologue scene just to burn pages, we can feel that. Like, there was nothing true or essential about either of these characters. You could have just looked at the pictures. The text tells you nothing. It didn't take us anywhere. It didn't reveal anything. You've got, if you're going to do this many talking heads in a comic book, and this goes on and on and on, you have to really have a sense of who those characters are and what we are learning about them, and that they're saying things in these scenes that we need to hear them say and that are revelatory to hear them say. And it never happens. And then the other half of this, and this just goes on, and the other half of this is like Black Widow getting a team back together that we just got introduced to in the past 3 issues. Like, there's nothing satisfying about that. This whole thing is just paced so badly. It had such a great #1 issue. It should have just been a one-shot. It should have just been the #1 one-shot and then right into New Avengers. This is the epitome of what is wrong with Marvel right now, to put out a series just to have a character in it that the creative team has no grasp on, that the story has no reason to exist, and that there are no plot beats that need to occur, and it's just pages of chewing scenery in forgettable ways. It is a dreadful, dreadful comic book. But, however, Dr. Doom did throw a pig at Bucky, and I did enjoy that. So 0.5 of a point for throwing a pig at Bucky. Next comes Transformers from Daniel Warren Johnson, George Corona, and Mike Spicer. And I have to think it's going to be letters by Russ Wooten, right? Yeah, letters by Russ Wooten. I have to say that I hated this. And the thing is, I'm gonna read to issue 24, and then I'm gonna bid a farewell to the universe of Transformers, because I just don't care. And the thing is, I think that this series has done a good job of making them interesting characters. I feel their hatred. I get their internal conflict within the Autobots and within the Decepticons, and that is really interesting. But it's just not interesting enough when they're just on Earth arguing with each other. Like, this whole issue is just basically Megatron. Optimus has revised a bunch of plane heroes, and he's like, oh, you're my soft boys. You always had the softest spark. I'm like, what? Like, okay, that I guess maybe if I had those toys, I would have cared. And then Megatron just beats the crap out of a bunch of characters. And by the way, I could not tell what was happening in the art. I don't know if it's just Transformers or what. Here, the thing that's actually happening is he's been beating the crap out of Starscream, and then they drag somebody else there, and he's going to make Starscream shoot that with a gun, him turning into a gun. But here's him turning into a gun. Here's him not a gun. How am I supposed to figure out that he went for, this is the guy that's captive. Here's him not as a gun. How was I supposed to figure that out? What about this page? What about these panels tells me that he transformed into a gun? It's invisible. It doesn't make any sense. We never even see this bird hovering over him to crane him up as the gun. The sequential storytelling is not there. This has been a problem with George Corona throughout this series. He's a great artist. He draws exactly in the Daniel Warren Johnson style. I almost said Hoover again, but this does not make sense. And for somebody like me who has no nostalgia for these characters, who's just trying to get by on the internal drama between them, if you're drawing page after page where I cannot track the action, then your book has failed. You are a failure at that point, which is crazy to say because it's clear that George Corona is a good artist. I don't think he's a good Transformers artist. I think Daniel Warren Johnson had the unique ability to do this kind of like messy Transformers thing and make it work and make it sing and make it followable. I just don't think George Corona is there. I think they picked him because he draws like Daniel Warren Johnson, but he's not the right artist for this. He would look great on G.I. Joe. He would look great on Void Rivals, but this comic is ultimately going to be a comic that I had a negative opinion about, not because the story was bad, but because the art could not tell the story effectively, and that bugs me. I meant to read this, The Trident of Ariella Corazon. It's I think the third in a series of Trident of Ariella series, and Battle Quest has been very kind as a comic book company to actually supply comps to me to read their stuff digitally because they don't have their digital store up yet. So big shout out to Battle Quest. Their comic books have been pretty cool. If you remember me reading the 27 run Crash a little bit earlier this year, that is also a Battle Quest comic. So maybe for the next issue of this, because the cover is really cool, maybe I will get a comp digital copy. I'd be happy to buy it if it was available for sale, but it is not. So I will look into getting a copy. I don't read Ultimate Black Panther. I'll read it when it's over. The rage just was devouring my soul. Same for Ultimate X-Men. It's just not my thing. I think I can tell that I actually can't tell that it's being well done. I think it's being done terribly. It's not my thing, and I think it's terrible. I'm also not reading the Uncanny X-Men. I'm so sorry for me. But I did read Usagi Yojimbo. I'm so sorry to you because this was the worst comic I read this week. I thought the first issue of this was so good. It was like an allegory. It was a roving samurai thing. I was totally into it. I don't know how you can take a series seriously that is this bad. Like, I don't know where the hype is. Maybe Stan Sakai's just older now and he's off his game. I don't know. But when I read this, I'm like, surely you're joking that Usagi Yojimbo is good. The art is bad. And it's not that it's loose. I can do loose art. It's just that like everybody's making a surprised face at everybody else all of the time, or they're making a face where their eyes are little dots. The letters are horrible. It's a joke that the Eisners gave him Best Letterer. It looks like he's drawing it in charcoal and not in a cool way. They're so weird and like broken up and edgy that it's just painful to drag my eyes across each balloon. And the colors by Hi-Fi Color Design here are terrible. Like, why is their idea of giving a shaded dimension in his face that some of his face is gray? Like, I get that they're just trying to put a little bit of depth of shading, but it's so like stupid and bad and not how color theory works. It doesn't actually give any dimension to his face because the gray tone is not pushed enough and it's not actually creating contrast. It just looks like my screen has a smudge on it. This is a complete failure. And then just like the drawings of this fox lady, like, and the thing is, the story here is interesting. This woman tries to bring her daughter to the city that has a beautiful orchard of plums. They won't give her a plum to heal her daughter. Her daughter dies, and so in her rage and grief, she turns into a yokai and she haunts the city. And eventually, at the end of this book, spoilers, all their plum trees get burnt down because they kill her. But every single panel of this was like, I think Kid Krisis at the age that she is draws better than this. I really thought that this was a true embarrassment to the legacy of Usagi Yojimbo, and you probably will never be able to convince me to read a comic by him again because this was so terrible. Okay. Sorry about it. And here's the thing. Again, you can draw scratchy, loose art. We've seen me like all kinds of indie books, but I don't like they have shock face in these two panels, and then we go right back to tiny eye face. There's no range. The only two faces we get in this book are shock face or tiny eye face. I don't understand. I hate it. I was like enraged. This is a drop for me. World Tree. Last issue jumped the shark, and I was like, okay, but maybe we just need to jump the shark the one time. Maybe we just need to make it over the shark the one time, and then everything would be great. No, this was terrible. This Fast forwards into the far future, it introduces a bunch of new characters. They're boring. They talk a bunch of gobbledygook. It's boring. Apparently, the World Tree world bled into our real world. Who gives a shit? This series went into the pooper. This went right down the flush toilet. It's probably the worst thing I've ever read by Tinian. The first 6 issues were amazing. The first arc was so incredible. It really felt like a series that was always meant to be a miniseries, and then he decided to extend it, and he realized he had no more ideas left. This was just bad through and through. The lettering was good, so good job, Aditya Bidikar, who is one of the people I love to interview, but this was dreadful. It was really bad. Really, really super bad. I don't read When I Lay My Vengeance Upon Me. I don't read Witchblade. I did read Wolverine. This was sufficient. I would almost go far to say it was proficient. Written by Saladin Ahmed, art from Javier Pina, colors from Brian Valenza, letters by Corey Petit. Basically, Saladin Ahmed put that whole arc to bed in issue 8, which great. 8 issues is a perfect, maybe one too long length for a first arc. But now Wolverine, for some reason, has received a letter from his mom, who's dead. So he's a little bit confused about that. But I like it because Saladin Ahmed just gets Wolverine's inner voice. And I know a lot of people are going to read this and say that it was boring or say that it was a waste of their time. But unlike Daredevil, where I never truly feel like we have spent a lot of quality time with Matt Murdock and like who Matt Murdock is, here I'm like, this is Logan. I feel like I am really spending time with Logan. And if you do that, I don't need a lot of bells and whistles. There's this great scene where this woman who he saves previously, and she's a special forces member, now is the chief investigator into him. And he's like, you're investigating me and you're just going to offer to shake my hand. And she says, is that so crazy? Stealthily hunting the Wolverine hasn't turned out well for anyone, really. Seems like time for a different approach, no? That's smart. Give me something in a Wolverine book I've never seen before. Give me the person from Department H who's supposed to keep tabs on Wolverine just showing up to have a beer with him and being like, I'm keeping some tabs on you. That's clever. Then he goes back to his childhood home. We have a brief run-in with some marauders. It was drawn really well, really paced well. At the end, there's the suggestion that Sabretooth is coming back. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, we just killed him. We just killed him a year ago. And he just had his own flashback miniseries that was actually decent by Frank Terry. Why are we bringing him back? But you know what? We're just going to go with it. We're just going to go with it because you know what? If somebody's going to get Wolverine's voice right, I can give you a lot of rope to hang yourself with. So I'm going to be okay with that. Jamie's C47 says, recently picked up the first trade of Wolverine and thought it was surprisingly good. Wasn't expecting much here in the concept. But here's the thing. Ever since the first issue, I've been saying all along, Ahmed absolutely gets the voice. His story is just a little lumpy and slow and sometimes really decompressed. But it feels fun to read because it really feels like we're spending time with Wolverine, which is what I assume we all wanted, right? Or else we wouldn't be reading a Wolverine comic book. And now, finally, here lies X Factor. And the thing I want to say about this that's positive is Bob Quinn did superstar work. He drew every damn issue of this book. I don't think he ever had a fill-in. Colored by Jesus Bertov. And he draws great characters. And Bob Quinn is somebody who can sell jokes. Like, he looks a lot like Stephen Byrne, who was the artist on Fire and Ice. Unfortunately, Mark Russell doesn't have any jokes. This was one issue that finally, kinda, sorta, almost took these characters seriously. Havoc kind of was himself. Polaris kind of was herself. And in that, he wrote some decent things, but I just think this issue exemplifies why the series failed, because he didn't take these beloved characters seriously. And I'm not saying you can't do a funny X-Men book. I'm not saying you can't do a jokey X-Men book, but to have Angel and Lorna and Alex in your book and just not like land any square hits and still be throwing out the jokes about Angel being a Judas and he's a traitor, and it's wrong. It's just wrong. You can do a funny book. Hellions was funny. We've had funny X-Men books that work, and I just think Mark Russell, if he's just not, I don't think he's that good at humor in general, but he's certainly not very good at superhero humor, and he's certainly not good at superhero humor with characters that we love. But this artwork from Bob Quinn was spectacular. Really, really good job. Can't wait to see where Bob Quinn goes next. And then, so 2 more. Rob Liefeld's Youngblood, the manga edition. What? So apparently this is something you can only get from Liefeld at conventions or on his Whatnot store. I did make a purchase from Rob Liefeld's Whatnot store, but you have to wait until my next haul around the world to see it. This is just Youngblood with manga style shaded coloring and motion lines, which I didn't get to read because it's not digital. But it's so funny. I am kind of I don't think of myself as a Youngblood super fan. They say as they have so many Youngblood trade paperbacks directly to their left. But I would have bought this if it was available digital. I am that easy mark that will keep buying Youngblood #1 no matter how many times Rob puts it out. I would rather read new Youngblood. I would rather see him do something with Youngblood, but you know what? That's my nostalgia button, and he's pinching it and tweaking it every single month. And then finally, here is Zaylin from the Rippaverse, written by Chuck Dixon with art by Joe Bennett. And here's the thing. I don't look too deeply into the comic book companies that are doing comics gate or hate I don't know. I just try to follow the comics, and if the comics themselves get offensive, okay. And I know I shouldn't be giving money to people who are doing horrible things, but often I don't want to do that level of research. It would be different if we were having them on the show to interview them. Then I would have to do my due diligence, but I don't feel the need to do due diligence to decide if I like a comic book or not. So I know you all make fun of and like hate Rippaverse. So I went on their website because I was trying to buy this digitally. I was going to give it a chance. Their website screams MLM to me, marketing pyramid. It screams ripoff to me, which is weird because then when you read, I love that they have like a statement of values on their site, and maybe it's a dog whistle, but not knowing who they are or what they're about, I read the statement of values, and the statement of values made a lot of sense to me. They're like, our comics are always going to matter. We're always going to have a timeline that makes sense. We're going to make sure that every time we put out an issue, it's an issue that's worth reading and that is worth your time and money. I'm like, damn, can I get Marvel to sell? It's like a comic reader's bill of rights. Can I get Marvel to sign this? So it's weird but then it's like a whole website that just, it's like the comics are like $18 each, and there's no digital versions, and there are all these colors, and there's packs, and they have a subscription model built in, which I like. So I was like, ooh, maybe I can do the subscription model and it has digital comics, but no, you just get like a discount on their merch if you subscribe to the subscription. So it just really struck me. And again, I don't know who these people are. I don't understand why we don't like them. I have no context whatsoever on it. I just know I've seen people make fun of it, and I know from some of the creators that are there that clearly it's some kind of something. But I truly don't know. I'm coming into this as a doe-eyed innocent. I'm Bambi in this situation. It's just weird to me that they could have such interesting values that appeal to me as a longtime comic book reader, but I get such scam vibes from the website, which seems to be totally at odds from their good vibes in their mission statement, which kind of communicates an unspoken to me that like, oh, they must be on the grift. They're trying to grift off of like a small number of readers because that's why there's some kind of dog whistling here, and I'm not that breed of dog, and so I don't hear the whistle. It's too high for me. So I don't know. And you know what? I would like to just continue to live in my naivete, and maybe one day they'll put something out digitally, and maybe one day I'll read it, and you know what? Maybe that book will be good on its own, and I will like it just on its merits. But I wouldn't love giving them money if there's somebody who's trying to like, you know, hate me or legislate me out of existence. That would be a bummer. But I don't know that. And everything I read about the guy who's their editor-in-chief seems pretty cool. So, but he also says he's a libertarian, and he was a commenter on Fox and Friends. So that gives me some doubts. But anyway, I truly don't know. And you know what? Don't tell me. Just let me live in my naivete. And eventually one day I'll figure out what this Rippaverse is and why we're all so concerned about it. Okay, we're right at the 3 hours mark. This is not even a big week. It was under 50 books. It makes me kind of scared about what happens next time we have 60. I do want to say hello to my longtime friend, although I don't know who's behind the steering wheel in this particular instance, but they're all my longtime friends at Omnibus Cafe, which if you're on Facebook and you're looking for a buy-sell trade group, is a pretty cool level-headed group of people to buy and sell and trade with. And you know what? We're past the 3 hours mark. I'm running out of voice. The makeup, who knows what's going to happen to it if I keep talking. I think we might call it. I think this might be it. No song, because as long as I'm behind, I don't get to play songs. I got to be back ahead. So here's the thing. You know there's all these other streams I want to do, but I got to catch up. I do think there could be another Polish stream today. Or not today. Jesus Christ. No, not today. This week. So if you haven't hit the notification bell and you want to see me when I turn up at times other than my normal Sunday afternoon time, that would be a good reason to hit notifications. Of course, I go through all of your comments and see them, although I think I saw just about all of them on the stream today. But always just know that I always go back, just like their creator statement was like, all of our comics matter. In my world, all of your comments matter. And I always go back and read them and absorb them because Like, it's wild to me that you spend 3 hours of your afternoon, whether you're mowing the lawn or in a car or on an airplane, which is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life, or you're just listening to me and listening to me to listen to me. I really, really value that. So I will be on Near Mint Condition later this week on Thursday night for a Superman Evergreen. I may just be hosting. I don't know if I'm going to be part of the actual Evergreen fight this week, just because I am so busy this week with catching up that I don't know that I'm going to actually be fighting. There might be another Crushing Crisis stream, and otherwise, I think that's it. I will say, for the first time since pre-COVID, I'm having somebody from out of the country visit and stay with me next week who I miss very, very dearly. I don't think their plane's going to be quite in yet at this time, so I think we will have a regular Bat Time, regular Bat Channel show, but then I might just be out of pocket next week because, like, human contact from outside of New Zealand, very, very valuable, and I've missed it very, very much. So hit the notification bell, and the world is rough, man. I mean, I woke up this morning and loaded the news. There's this joke that a lot of Australians and Kiwis make of, like, yeah, we wake up in the morning and just see what audacious bullshit the United States have gotten up to, because when we wake up in the morning, you know, it's already the afternoon there and the news cycle is already happening. It's a tough world to be in. And then I'm going to say the thing that I say every week, which is, like, you gotta just treat yourself well. You've got to just treat yourself well and try to treat other people the way you would be treated. And if you see something happening in the world that you're like, wow, it would suck to be me in that situation, maybe reconsider if that situation should be happening, right? So, you know, people aren't illegal. Black Lives Matter. Trans rights are human rights, all of my things. And I don't just say them to be like, slogan, slogan, slogan. These are things that I deeply, deeply believe. And I hope that even if you don't share every liberal belief with me, this is a liberal show. I tell you every time we do this. You're watching this because secretly this is the comic books is the spoonful of sugar you get with me being a hyper liberal person and trying to be visible and vocal on the internet. And I'm never saying that you have to agree with everything that I think or feel, but let's just try to start by recognizing people's humanity. And if we can start there, I'm sure we can get somewhere where we can all love comic books together. So until I see you later this week, whether it's on my channel or Near Mint Condition, or I see you next week, please try your best in this very crazy, excruciating world to not have a crisis. Unless, of course, that crisis is me. Be well, everybody.